Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Luffy rewrite fate in future? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Sabo was having a normal day. Nowadays, it was unusual for him to be back in Baltigo. As the chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army, he had the responsibility to oversee missions here and there. Not that he was complaining though, but he was overworked in the past few weeks. It was Koala who knocked some sense into him, ordering him to take a break and have a fresher for a few days. So far, he's enjoying it. He was in his personal quarters, part of the perks of being one of the higher-ups, but it was rarely used. He could count on his fingers the time that he stayed here. If his estimation was correct, it will only be the 9th time ever since he became the second in command. The room was a simple one, a bed on the left side and 2 bookshelves on the right. The walls were painted in plain gray like the rest of their base. He was on his desk, skimming over the reports that he tried to avoid for a while now. He was bored doing paperwork, but he had a responsibility now, not a child who whined over duties. He heaved a heavy sigh, reaching for his left eyelid, rubbing and seeking relief. It felt sore after hours of reading in dim light. Doing paperwork at dawn turned out to be disastrous. A knock had resounded in his room. He jerked up, startled. Without turning his head, Sabo said, "Come in." The door clicked open, making Sabo glance back to know who the visitor was. It was Delvin, an officer stationed right here in the headquarters. He was a middle-aged man who had been a member long before Sabo had joined. Delvin stood in the door frame with a neutral look on his face. "Morning, Chief," Delvin greeted in monotone. "Good morning," Sabo greeted back, turning his seat to face the man. He crossed his arms, maintaining a neutral expression. "I take that it's not good news you brought for me today?" Delvin nodded automatically. There seemed to be a hesitation as he opened his mouth to speak. An intruder had breached the base just this morning. We've already had him in custody. Sabo didn't hide the surprise in his face, eyes widening for a moment. That was an unusual thing to hear. Baltigo was their base of operation for a reason. It's an island hidden away from the world. It's difficult to find and log poses never pointed out. It's a wasteland, called the land of white soil for a reason. Trees and plants never grew here and there's no towns or people other than the revolutionaries. One might wonder how someone could end up in this kind of place. Maybe intruder is the wrong term to use. Delvin said reluctantly. Why? He was sent here by Kuma. The paw prints outside are proof of that. Sabo put a hand on his chin, deep in thought. That answered the question of how but not why. He knew Kuma wouldn't easily rattle out their base as Dragon trusted him enough. He doesn't seem to be a spy who works for the world government, Delvin continued, clearing his throat. We've identified him to be a rookie pirate. The name Straw Hat Luffy might ring a bell to you. The guy who raised hell in Eni's lobby? That's the one. If he remembered the report he read correctly, the Marines declared a buster call on the island only to fail to eradicate the Straw Hat pirates. In a way, the Revolutionary Army should be thankful to that pirate crew since they managed not only to destroy Pluton's blueprint, but also protect Nico Robin, the only known survivor of O'Hara that could read the poneglyphs. Meeting the said captain of the Straw Hat pirates ought to be intriguing. He looked up at Delvin who was waiting for his answer. Sabo stood up while adjusting his cravat. "I'd like to see him," Sabo said firmly. Delvin nodded and saluted. "At once, sir." Before visiting the captive pirate, Sabo asked Delvin to point out where the paw prints were to make sure it was Kuma. Sabo knew that it's legitimate as he's also been sent by Kuma to different places back in the past. The only question is why. He knew Kuma wouldn't do such a thing without a good reason. The prison ward was located west of the building. It was rarely used as they never wanted their enemies to know where their base was. On the way, Sabo was greeted by most of the officers who hadn't seen him for a while. It was still early in the morning but most people were already up and drinking their coffees. On the entrance of the prison ward, 2 guards were there and saluted when they saw him. Before Sabo could ask about the situation, they heard a loud familiar shrieking voice inside. "I can't believe you. Miss Koala seems to lose her temper upon our visitor," Delvin stated with slight amusement in his tone. Sabo let out an exasperated sigh. "It's not a good sign when she yells. She's normally the level-headed one out of the 2 of us." They made their way inside, walking through a long corridor of plain, boring gray walls. There was no other prisoner here than Straw Hat. Sabo wiped down the trailing sweat on his forehead. The humidity here was unusually higher than the other parts of the building. Sabo finally saw Koala in the end of the corridor. She had her arms crossed over her chest, feet stomping on the ground heavily each time. She was frowning, eyes steady and staring inside the prison cell with a determined but annoyed look. She took notice of them approaching. Koala tried to erase her look but to no avail. Sabo, please, Koala groaned. I don't think I have enough brain cells to deal with this airhead. That bad, huh? Sabo smirked. Is he really even a pirate? He doesn't make any sense. He said that he's Straw Hat Luffy and asked for my name. As a courtesy, I said Koala. And do you even know what he asked me? He asked if koalas poop. Like what kind of question is? Sabo had to laugh after hearing that. He tried to hold his mouth with his hand but he failed miserably. Koala hit him in the head but he was too busy laughing to care. Delvin at least did a much better job hiding his merriment. Hello, Mr. Top Hat, greeted by the prisoner. Sabo still had a smirk on his lips whilst meeting eye to eye with him. Thick bars that's made out of sea prism stone stood between them. In the hot summer, there was a small window providing a fresher air inside. There was a bed with a mattress that was ravaged by time. There's also one pillow and stained blanket. In the middle of the room, there sat a young teen. Sabo took in his appearance. He has thick black hair and tan skin, obviously younger than Sabo. Below his left eye, a clear scar was showing. He was wearing a blue tank top and red shorts. His signature straw hat was hanging on his nape. He was fidgeting, feet slapping each other. One thing that stood out of him was his widened grin and mischievous chuckles. Sabo's first impression of Straw Hat Luffy was that he's eccentric. Who would smile and laugh like that knowing that you're being held prisoner? Sabo felt curiosity getting the best out of him. He used observation hockey and surprisingly, Straw Hat's emotion was not a fraud. Top Hat? That's a weird nickname for me, Straw Hat Luffy. Sabo raised an eyebrow. Straw Hat continued to chuckle, body leaning sideways. It's because you're wearing one. Ah yes, of course. You'd given me that nickname since your epithet is about your hat. Yup, Straw Hat suits me the same way Top Hat suits you. Delvin had to clear his throat at that point. Sir, I believe this is no time for chit-chat. He has that effect of always changing the topic onto weird things. Koala mumbled with a huff. My bad, Sabo apologized. He looked at the prisoner once again. This time with a neutral expression, the one he always used to interrogate. Monkey D. Luffy, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, the current user of the Gomu Gomu no Mi, has a bounty of 300 million berries, originally from East. Yup, that sounds like me. Blue, Sabo continued. Straw Hat, what is your purpose here? Why would a pirate like you be sent here by Kuma? Kuma? The bear guy? The revolutionaries nodded. I dunno, Straw Hat quickly answered, shrugging. Everyone just vanished in front of me after bear guy touched them. I'm the last and then I was flying for so long I was worried I'll land on the sea and not be able to swim. I'm glad I landed here but then I was immediately captured. I can't fight back, cause I haven't eaten since forever. Nah, you have food, right? I'm Hun. Okay. Sabo halted, putting his hand up. He turned to Koala and Delvin. Did you catch that? No, replied the two. Great, Sabo replied dryly. Talking to this pirate turned out to be an exasperating job. It's like talking to an over-enthusiastic 7-year-old. Chief, haven't you read the newspapers these past few days? Delvin questioned, flabbergasted. No, I've been busy. You did a background check yet still didn't know what he did? Koala huffed. Apologies for not knowing everything and engaging myself in writing reports. Sabo mouthed sarcastically. The worst generation that emerged from Sabaody is all they talked about right now. Straw Hat Luffy here is the most infamous. Koala looked at the pirate before back at Sabo, smiling reverently. He punched a celestial dragon in the face. There was a stutter on Sabo's brain as he took in the information. He what? He stared at Luffy, eyes started twitching. He pointed a finger at him. Why would you do something like that? He scolded him like an older brother would do. He deserves it. He wanted to make Kamiya SLV. No one gets away from hurting my friends. Luffy defended, growling and standing up. He walked and the two men were only inches apart, divided by the bars. Sabo eyed the pirate, knowing the look all too well. Straw Hat has that determination burning right through his eyes. Sabo never thought he'd seen a look like that coming from a pirate. But Straw Hat was proving himself to be more than just that. No one in this world would ever want to cross paths with those scums known as celestial dragons. Sabo could also happily punch one on the face but it's too complicated. The world government always had their backs. The Revolutionary Army's goal is to put a stop on their tyranny and corruption. For now, Sabo had to admire Straw Hat's foolishness. He has never heard of anyone who did such a thing and lives to tell the tale. You're either brave or just straight out stupid, I can't decide yet, Sabo deadpanned. Really? Thanks. Straw Hat cheered up upon hearing those words. He doesn't even realize we're dissing him. Koala had to put a hand in her face at that point, shaking her head. But I'll be honest and say that I'm impressed by his feat. That still doesn't answer why Kuma would send him here, Delvin said, still deep in thought. A pirate who committed a heinous crime in the eyes of the world government. It would be a bad thing if they managed to track him here. Sabo added, clicking his tongue. Closing his eyes, Sabo let out a sigh. The summer heat was making him feel like having a headache, not only that but add Straw Hat's statements and it's enough for him. As of far, none of their questions were answered and more are still arising. He removed his hat, tracing his blonde hair with his fingers. It's been a while since he last saw Kuma. He's on an espionage mission as one of the 7 warlords. Sabo trusted the gentle giant whatever his reason was. Straw Hat is a pirate being hunted by the government and it's only natural for Kuma to be the one to eradicate them if it comes to that. But he saved them by sending the crew who knows where else. None of that made any sense as revolutionaries rarely work with pirates. Not only that, Kuma sent Straw Hat right exactly at their base. Even Straw Hat himself didn't know what's going on. Sabo? That broken voice halted Sabo's brooding. Hearing his name coming out from Straw Hat's mouth crushed his heart. There's something painful about it, yearning and eager to be heard. Sabo once again directed his attention to the pirate, wondering why he knew about his name when they never had a proper introduction. Sabo's eyes widened, wondering what happened to Straw Hat after such a short amount of time. Straw Hat Luffy was crying. The boy who had a contagious grin and merrily laughs earlier, was full-on having a mental breakdown. His black eyes were bulging out from their sockets. His mouth hung open as all the muscles on his face tightened to form a frown that didn't suit his face. Overwhelmed by Sabo's appearance, he was frozen on the spot. Small pecks of tears were forming and ready to be leashed on any moment now. His soft whimpers were becoming louder as weariness washed over the young pirate. He took a step back, still not believing what was in front of him was real. It hurts, hearing and seeing Straw Hat this way, and Sabo didn't understand why. There was a line forming between Sabo's eyebrows. He glanced over his acquaintances, looking for a likely explanation, but none was offered at that moment. He opened and closed his mouth but was unable to voice out a thought. Confusion instilled over him, wondering how Straw Hat knew about his name when he hadn't had the pleasure of exchanging pleasantries. "Where have you been all this time?" Straw Hat yelled out. He tried reaching out with his right arm but Sabo habitually backed away. And as Straw Hat's left hand touched the bar made out of sea stone, he started showing signs of nausea. He hit the floor hard as saliva started building out on his mouth. Straw Hat let out a wail. Tears streamed down his cheeks, still helplessly trying to stretch out his arms but failing miserably. With every ball Straw Hat emitted, Sabo could feel a tug deep inside his heart. "We thought you died." Straw Hat whimpered, wiping a snot with his hand. "You recognized me?" Sabo found himself asking, cautious yet curious. "Of course, I do. I will always know my brother." Sabo's eyes widened as the tugging of his heart didn't cease, it merely increased. He moistened his dry lips as spasms crossed his whole face. The color of his skin turned pale. Brother. That's the word he used. And hope once again sparked inside Sabo. Years and years of wishing yet ending up disappointed. He used to be a lost soul who didn't belong anywhere. No emotions tied to things, no sense of belonging, and no self-identity. He simply lived to exist. He learned to bury all the feelings down and focused on the present where there's people who accepted him. But now, there's a ray of hope shining. A chance for him to know who he was, before being part of the Revolutionary Army, before the amnesia. And that hope was still burning inside of him, fiery and passionate. "He's from East Blue," Delvin muttered under his breath, knowing about Sabo's story. "Straw Hat Luffy." Sabo shook away all his thoughts and focused on one, still repeating the question. Straw Hat was still on the ground, mumbling gibberish words. "Do I know you?" Straw Hat's whimpers stopped and he stared back at him. Disappointment was clear all over his face. "Why you don't know me?" Sabo flinched. "I don't. That's why I am expecting you to tell me." "You're Sabo," Straw Hat said firmly as he sat up. "You're way smarter than Ace and me. You always like to wake up extra early to make us breakfast. You like reading anything and explaining things to me. And you enjoy hearing the birds chirping, 'cause they sound like freedom to you. You always make sure I get the biggest piece of meat since Ace kept stealing them. You also taught me how to read and count. Whenever we take a bath, you scrub my back gently. And at night, you like reading me stories and singing pirate shanties." Sabo blinked rapidly, not recognizing anything he was saying. Straw Hat was laughing again, tears still visible on his eyes. "And most of all, you called us your greatest treasure." There was silence. No one dared to say anything. Sabo was aware that everyone was looking at him, yet his expression didn't change. He maintained a stoic appearance as he didn't know how to react. "It's all right if you don't remember me," Straw Hat reassured, smiling affectionately. "I'm just happy to know that you're alive and you found friends." "Straw Hat, Puru puru puru," Sabo groaned, grabbing his personal den mushi out of his coat. "I have to take this quickly." He walked away immediately, as fast as he could. Once he was 50 meters away from them, he released out the breath he was holding for so long. Everything was too confusing for him to process. He needed this time to brood and think about what Straw Hat said. The call was a blessing in disguise and he needed to answer it. Only a few people knew about his number and it ought to be important. "Hello?" Sabo, it was his superior, Dragon, who answered on the other end. "Have you talked to our visitor?" "Yes, I am in the middle of it," Sabo cleared his throat. "I did confirm that he is indeed Straw Hat Luffy, but I am still trying to find an explanation on why Kuma would send him here." "Do not bother about it. Release him." "What?" "He is no threat to us, but I want you to accompany him at all times and make sure his needs are met." "What?" Sabo repeated, but more puzzled this time. "May I ask why?" Dragon didn't answer right away and silence engulfed the line. "Report to my office now." "Yes, sir." Sabo hesitated if he needed to tell him that Straw Hat was claiming that they were related, but Dragon had already ended the call. Sabo went back to his colleagues and Straw Hat right after. They were in the middle of a conversation, but this time, Koala seemed much more lively and open. Sabo and Koala both have history with celestial dragons. Hearing about Straw Hat's feat probably cemented the idea to Koala that Straw Hat is a kind man. "Sabo." Straw Hat was the first one who took notice of his return. "You're back." Koala immediately grabbed Sabo's arm and turned their backs away from Straw Hat. She whispered, "He's claiming that he's from Dawn Island. It's hard to tell if his story is legitimate, but I will let it up to you, sir. Talk to him." Delvin added in a genuine tone. Sabo sighed. "Dragon-san called. He wants him released." "What? Why?" Koala blinked. "That's exactly my reaction. I don't know why, but he also asked for my presence. I guess we have to bring him over with us." "This whole morning has been more or less odd," Koala commented. "Are you guys done talking?" Straw Hat asked boredly. "Straw Hat," Sabo acknowledged. "It's Luffy. I want you to call me Luffy, but Lu works, too." Straw Hat Luffy insisted on. "Luffy." Sabo noticed how much Luffy beamed upon hearing his name. The pirate gave him a toothy grin. "You are being released, but you have to stay by my side all the time." "Really? Thank you." Koala revealed keys from her pockets and started scrambling to open the gates. Luffy was jumping up and down, excited to attain his freedom. Once the lock clicked, Luffy straight away went outside. His arms extended impossibly for a normal human. It was the first time Sabo saw his devil fruit power being used, and it was a fascinating sight. But Luffy's target turned out to be him. Without warning, Luffy flew straight at him. "Sabo!" Luffy happily screamed. Sabo had no choice but to catch the raven-haired boy in his arms. Luffy was embracing him with all his might, not showing a sign of releasing any time soon. He could feel that he was being crushed. Sabo had been hugged before, but never like this. It was warm and it felt right, as if Sabo had missed this all his life. Perhaps the hope had been there all along, but without the feeling of love, it was trapped. Luffy was crying again, but this time, it was happy tears. But Sabo couldn't understand if he was laughing or crying or both. Luffy looked up at him with a smile plastered on his lips. Sabo just stood there, frozen, feeling awkward about the encounter. He looked over at his colleagues, but they were just smiling. Sabo reached out and stroked Luffy's back, even if the move seemed fiddly. And Sabo truly believed that Luffy's actions and words were honest. Dragon's office was located on the top floor, East Wing. Getting onto it took longer than expected and was a challenge by itself. It took Luffy a whole 5 minutes before letting the revolutionary go. But even when they were walking, Luffy was still clinging to Sabo as if he's a child. He kept mumbling random things, but Sabo didn't have the time to focus on it for now. He didn't have the heart to call out Luffy's behavior, but Koala did, and it fell on deaf ears. Everyone that they passed on were staring at them for obvious reasons. The word of a pirate breaching onto their base was already circulating, but seeing the said pirate hugging their chief of staff was unheard of. Sabo's dignity was getting smaller by the minute. Delvin had to excuse himself halfway through as he was still needed elsewhere. Once they were in front of the door, Luffy's sobs were much quieter, much to Sabo's relief. Sabo tapped Luffy's shoulder. "Stay here for a minute." Luffy's eyebrows furrowed, and for a second, Sabo thought that he won't ever let him go. "Okay. Thank you." Sabo offered a small smile. Luffy finally let him go, allowing Sabo to flatten his wrinkled shirt using his hand. He took a look at Koala, nodding at her. She immediately knew what to do, and it's to make sure Luffy won't go anywhere. Sabo stepped inside the office, closing the wooden door behind him. The ambience of the room has always been prosaic. His boss was never the type of person who likes to spend money on frivolous things. The office was built in with a balcony, allowing fresh air to cool down his body. It was spacious, although lacking any particular appliance. Just like his own room, it only contained a desk and shelves. Most of the room had been kept clean except the desk. The papers and reports the man had been working on had been scattered around. There in the middle seated Dragon. Both of his hands were under his chin as he stared at Sabo with his fierce dark eyes. Dragon's expression remained stoic and has always been ever since they first met. Although his eyes carried tiredness that never went away. "Dragon-san," Sabo said. "Sabo, what took you so long?" Dragon inquired in a neutral voice. It took Sabo everything not to groan. "Our visitor has been difficult." "Oh? But I have everything under con." A loud boom broke out suddenly, making Sabo look on his back. The door was in pieces and Sabo was glad he avoided the debris by shielding his arm. He stared at the culprit with wide eyes. "Oops," was all Luffy had to say. He redacted his stretched arm back and started laughing apologetically. "What are you doing?" Koala shrieked as every last patience she had was gone. "I didn't mean to. What on earth made you think that punching that door was the right thing to do?" "But Sabo's taking so long." "Wah? He's just been gone for a minute, you idiot. I take this as the difficulty you've been talking about." Dragon commented in amusement as Koala and Luffy continued their argument. "Yes." Sabo shook his head, defeated. "Among other things." "Sabo, help me. Koala is being mean." Luffy sulked as he tugged Sabo's coat. "Dragon-san, this is Monkey D. Luffy," Sabo introduced. If Dragon ordered for Luffy to be released, he knew that Luffy could be trusted to some extent. "Luffy, this is Dragon-san. He is the head of this place." "Oh, his name is Dragon?" Luffy asked, pointing at the man. "Yes, but don't refer to him in such an informal manner." Koala answered in irritation. "Hi, Dad." "Hello, Luffy. You found Sabo for me," Luffy beamed brightly. "Thank you." Sabo blinked, not believing his own ears. He looked at Luffy, then at Dragon, then back at Luffy again. His eyelids started twitching uncontrollably. "Did you just call him Dad?" Sabo yelled overdramatically. "Yup, is something wrong about it?" Luffy inquired innocently. "But you're already claiming that you're Sabo's brother," Koala said, voicing out his thoughts. "Wait, does that mean? Whatever it is that you're thinking, the answer is no." Dragon interrupted him, causing Sabo to close his mouth. "It is only fitting that you ask him." "Just who are you?" Koala asked in a mumbled tone. Chuckling, he introduced, "I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I'm gonna be the Pirate King." And then it clicked on him, a memory from almost a year ago. Sabo had accompanied Dragon on a mission in East Blue where they stopped by at Logetown. There was a young pirate who was about to get killed by another pirate on the platform where the Pirate King was executed. And just before the blade was about to hit his neck, a lightning struck the platform. Sabo was certain it was caused by Dragon. It didn't end with that. Dragon also helped the pirate to deal with a marine captain. The wind was harsher that day and it allowed the pirate crew to escape their marine pursuers. It all made sense now. "Gramps told me about you back when we were in Water 7, Luffy explained. "I also want to thank you that time you saved me from Smokey." "It is no bother." Dragon's face didn't change at all. He closed his eyes before breathing out. "Have the three of you eaten? You ought to talk about all this. Would you like to join us?" Sabo offered. Dragon shook his head and Sabo knew he would disagree, but it's worth the shot. "Congratulations on finding your brother, Sabo." Sabo had to raise his eyebrows at that. "Food? Yeah, I'd like that. I haven't eaten since forever." Luffy let himself be dragged by Sabo away. He turned his head one last time. "Bye, Dad. Maybe we can talk again sometime." Sabo also glanced back, noticing that Dragon's face had changed. The man's eyes widened for a moment. "Maybe, he's not that heartless when it comes to his son." "So you're Dragon-san's son," Sabo repeated as he crossed his arms. "Uh-huh." Luffy nodded while shoving a mouthful of rice down his throat. "And also my brother." "Yup. But we're not blood related." "Yeah, but who cares about blood anyway? And you're saying that we have another brother whose name is Ace who's also not blood related to us. He'd be happy to see you, too. And we became brothers because we drank sake together." Luffy burped before answering, "Sounds about right." They were in the cafeteria where thankfully there's far fewer people than Sabo had expected. They got their food and the look on the cook's face as they saw Luffy grabbing as much food as he could was priceless. Sabo was not surprised, but he had to apologize on the pirate's behalf. He now found a similarity between the father and son, a huge appetite. They went to the far corner, wanting seclusion, but with Luffy's screaming voice, everyone knew what they were talking about. The word that Luffy being Dragon's son has been circulating in the base as fast as the wind. Sabo wondered if Dragon was bothered that his personal matter was being talked about. His boss was the type of person who values his privacy seriously. But Sabo hasn't heard a word about his and Luffy's connection, but it's probably on its way. The rumor mill will never stop once it starts. Luffy's storytelling was incomprehensible most of the time. Deciphering it took Sabo and Koala long enough. Luffy likes to get distracted by other stories, and it was Sabo's job to make sure he was on track. From his understanding, the story was that he was a runaway noble who met an orphan named Ace. They became friends, and 5 years later they met Luffy. They became brothers and they lived with bandits before moving in at a treehouse. They spent most of their time ransacking a junkyard. They dreamed of being pirates and wanted freedom. One day, his father caught him and forced him back home. He escaped to sea, but unfortunately it's the day a celestial dragon was visiting the place and he got shot. Luffy and Ace believed that he died since he lost his memory and didn't want to go back. You know, the only thing that made sense about Luffy's story is you being a noble. Koala stated before taking a bite out of an apple. Why? You never lose the sophisticated clothing and accent. Koala commented with a smile. That, and I hate my parents. Sabo sighed deeply as he ran his fingers through his blonde hair. I remember not wanting to go back to Dawn Island because of them. So you've been a rebel ever since you're a kid? Shocker. Do you believe me now? Luffy asked. I am still expecting myself to wake up from this fever dream. Sabo said, making Luffy pout. But your story sounds too bizarre to be a lie. And the things you told me are consistent. Luffy grinned. So do you still like smelling books? As weird as it sounds, he still does. Koala confirmed, chuckling. Traitor, Sabo playfully hissed. There was comfortable silence once the three of them focused on eating their meals. Luffy is Dragon's son, and Sabo believed that Luffy wouldn't lie to him because of the connection. Dragon was an honest man to the core. He owed Dragon his whole life, but being a bond brother with his son was too much of a coincidence. Maybe not a coincidence. The reason why Dragon-san was there that day. A celestial dragon was visiting Dawn Island and he knew how much trouble they were. He was probably there to look over you. Sabo muttered. Luffy shrugged nonchalantly, maybe. Sabo inclined back to his seat, looking at the distance. He became serious again. Look, Luffy. I don't want to disappoint you. The doctors have already told me many times that the chances of me recovering my memories is slim to none. Oh, Luffy blinked, not hiding his disappointment. It doesn't matter. We can still create new ones if you want. And if you don't want me in your life, I can leave you alone. Sabo winced. What makes you think I don't want you? I told you, didn't I? As long as I know that you're happy and alive, that's enough for me. Sabo couldn't help but smile after hearing those words. Well, I'd like to know more about you. Yeah, I'd like that, too. Luffy copied his expression. By the time they finished eating, it was nearly lunchtime, meaning more revolutionaries were on their way to get their meals. Koala entrusted Sabo to keep Luffy in check. In Sabo's mind, his partner was just letting him do all the babysitting over Luffy. Koala deserved her mental health break. You have so many books. Kinda reminds me of Chopper's office except for all that scary medical equipment. Luffy observed upon entering Sabo's room. He ran over to the bed where he settled down, hugging his pillow. Sabo went over to his desk, wanting to finish his earlier paperworks. Just stay here with me, okay? Luffy hummed in agreement. I'd like to take a nap. That's good, Sabo nodded. As much as he wanted to talk with Luffy more, he still had his other duties. Besides, Luffy needed all the rest as flying for 3 days straight was not an ideal place to sleep in. Sabo watched as Luffy nestled in. Satisfied once his breathing evened, he started writing reports. He thought drowning himself from his work would be enough to distract him, but his mind was still somewhere else. He dwelled over everything he learned today, focusing on the feelings he felt. He was happy, overjoyed even, but it was all happening too fast. He couldn't possibly cope with the revelation in a few hours. Luffy had been very charming and outgoing. Sabo easily got along with him, letting the awkwardness die. He didn't know how long Luffy would stay here, but Sabo would like to make sure they at least spent time together. Being dubbed as Luffy's older brother was still distant to him, but he'd get over to that point later on. Sabo's hold on the pen tightened. It was frustrating, trying to remember the past. He kept on questioning why he couldn't even see glimpses of his memories no matter how hard he focused. Sabo, Luffy's brother, is a different one from Sabo, who's a revolutionary. It was given since he was only 10 years old at that time. But there's no way he'd give up now that he found Luffy. He reclined back on his seat, exhaling out loud. He rubbed his whole face, feeling exhausted. Looking at the chrono, he noticed that he's been working for an hour now. He had to convince himself that he deserved a break, and so he did. He glanced back, checking on his visitor. Luffy was gone. Sabo jerked up, cursing under his breath. The bed was unmade and the pillow was on the floor. Was he really that distracted to the point he didn't notice Luffy sneaking out? A leash would be able to solve his problem. He calmed himself down. Using his observation haki, he reached out. He could sense everything, but he effortlessly found Luffy's presence. Sabo stood up, running. He opened the door, revealing a familiar place. Hack. Sabo, the fishman greeted with a nod. Koala told me everything. I'd really like to talk with you, but Straw Hat Luffy is on the training ground. No one is bothering him at the moment. Hack explained. Thanks. Sabo uttered as he sprinted. Some people called him out, but Sabo didn't have time for it and apologized by yelling. Most of them were telling what Hack had told him. Just how long had it been since Luffy left? One moment, he was sleeping peacefully, and next thing you know he was nowhere to be found. Once Sabo was on the training ground outside, he saw the trainee children being instructed. They were in the middle of a match and Sabo made sure not to bother them. Luffy was easy to spot, sitting on top of a boulder, silently watching the fight with interested eyes. Sabo sneaked, sitting next to him. Oh, hi, Luffy greeted him with a smile. Weren't you napping? Next time, don't go around without telling me first. Sabo elucidated, straight to the point. I'm sorry. I was bored. You're working and I don't want to bother you. Luffy made a face. You're not a bother, Luffy. You're my responsibility for now. They remained silent, focusing on the fight ongoing. Maybe this was deemed to be a nice break. Sabo knew most of the kids as they looked up to him as an older brother. He was also an instructor whenever his schedule would allow it. He heard Luffy chuckling, we used to train like that, too. Although you and Ace would team up at beating me. Sabo didn't know what to answer. He stared at Luffy, whose eyes were glimmering with nostalgia. His smile was softer, making him look more innocent. He was also clasping something on his hand. Is that a Vivre card? Sabo asked, pointing it with his finger. Yeah, Ace gave it to me back in Alabasta. It's burning. For a month now, Luffy bit his bottom lip, trying to hide his worry. I'd like to know if Ace is fine, but I'm sure my crew is waiting for me back in Sabaody. We plan to meet up in 3 days. Ace is strong and he won't like it when I'm worried about him. You're leaving? Sabo blurted out. That's my plan, but discovering that you're here makes it harder. Luffy grinned. Do you think Dad would let you escort me back? I'd like to introduce you to my crew if it's all right. Maybe, we can, Sabo said in uncertainty. Sabaody would take them a week to travel and Sabo doubted that Dragon would let him go for that long. Luffy removed his hat and tucked the Vivre card back away. He looked sideways with curious eyes. Can I ask you about something else? Ask away. What's it like having Ami Asae? Luffy interrogated, tilting his head. Sabo blinked rapidly, not expecting that question. Amnesia? Yeah, that. Sabo didn't meet Luffy's curious eyes. He looked at the sky, thinking of a proper answer for Luffy to easily understand. He sighed slowly. I lost myself. That doesn't sound nice, Luffy frowned. I have forgotten my memories and they're gone. I didn't even know that they were there in the first place. I don't know what's wrong with me, it's just that nothing feels right. Back then, I just felt lost and empty. There were some days Sabo would intentionally wander around on any island, hoping that maybe someone would be able to recognize. Panic attacks became common and there was no one to comfort him about it. He couldn't breathe nor voice out his feelings. He wanted to go back home, but he didn't even know where it was or who it was. But you're all right now, right? Luffy questioned. I am. Sabo smiled, trying to ease his concern. He put a hand on his shoulder. I had to thank Dragon-san for that. He gave me a second chance in life. I've met and formed connections with others, but I am still willing to let you in my life. Luffy nodded firmly, fixing his gaze as he looked up at him with new profound awe. And in the moment of a genuine conversation, Luffy's stomach started growling. Sabo boomed in laughter. Already? We just ate an hour ago. That's an hour ago. And besides, I've missed 3 days worth of food. That's like 15 meals. Why are you counting 5 meals a day? I dunno, you tell me. You're the one who taught me how to count. And they continued their argument as they made their way towards the cafeteria. Luffy was quickly on the rise, becoming the new attraction of their base. Seeing him eating food at such a fast pace caused quite the stir. Most officers who had their free time visited him at the cafeteria just to watch him devour anything in his path. Sabo was amused and dreading, praying that their supply would be enough to feed the pirate for days to come. I bet you 1,000 berries he would down 40 plates. Amara smirked, revealing cash from her pockets. She has red hair and was in her 30s. 1,500 berries, he'd finished 50. Nito laughed, readying his money for the bet. He's a wolf mink who likes drinking. Others also started to join in for the bet, some betting in with ridiculous amounts. Sabo didn't stop the gambling going as long as it wouldn't cause trouble. Luffy was still oblivious to everyone's commotion over his eating habits. He was still going on, eating whatever his rubbery hand could grab. Sabo groaned as he smacked a hand on his face. Please don't encourage him. The cooks are already on their last breaths. But it tasted so good, Sabo. Luffy complimented, mouth full of food. He swallowed it down. Still not as good as Sanji's though, but it'll do. Don't talk while your mouth is full. Sabo reminded, crossing his arms. Ah, Amara teased, wriggling her eyebrows. Sabo-kun is such a good big brother. Yeah, that's our chief for ya. Nito laughed, putting his arms over Sabo's neck. Sabo tried hiding his reddened face, dignity now completely gone. Stop, this day has already been too much. It's been a while since you're last here on the base. They've just missed you. Hack, who was on his left, explained sympathetically as he patted his back. What about we let Dragon-san and Luffy-kun do an eating contest? Which one do you think would win? Amara pondered in amusement. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, after all. Sabo sneered. What makes you think that he would agree to doing something that absurd? Phew, Luffy expressed, sighing. He put down his last plate. I think I'm done for now. 54, 55, 56. He finished 56 plates. Oh yeah, I won. Kid, you're something else. Luffy burped before laughing, thank you for the meal. Sabo smiled at the commotion happening. It's endearing to see Luffy being accepted by everyone with ease. He's energetic and easygoing, far from his father's personality. Everyone who knew Dragon might wonder how they could be related, but Sabo could see glimpses of his boss on. Luffy. Hi, Koala. Luffy called out. Sabo looked up, seeing his partner walking towards them. Sabo immediately took notice of her dreadful appearance. Years of being with her, and he certainly knew if something was wrong. She was clutching a newspaper in her hands, shaking in every step as she made her way towards their table. What is it? Sabo inquired, standing up. Koala didn't acknowledge him, instead she looked over at Luffy. The other brother you're talking about earlier, it's Fire Fist Ace? Luffy nodded with a smile upon hearing his name. Yeah, what about it? Koala didn't reply as she handed him the newspaper. Sabo moved over next to them, wondering what was in the newspaper that made Koala react the way she did. It was unusual for news coups to release a special issue of newspapers on the same day. Whatever news it was, it's surely significant. A man wearing an orange cowboy hat was on the front cover. Freckles were sprinkled on his cheeks, smirking slyly. It was Portgas Ace, a rookie pirate infamous for joining the Whitebeard Pirates 2 years ago. Sabo had seen him in the newspapers over the years. The thought that they have a connection never crossed his mind. War in Horizon, Whitebeard's commander to be executed at Marineford. And Sabo could only watch as Luffy was wallowed in by panic. It was the first time Luffy felt emptiness. He remembered when he was younger, asking Makino about what happens when a person dies. Makino smiled at him sympathetically, explaining that once a person is gone, no one could tell where they went. Makino taught him a valuable lesson that day. People need to make sure they spend time with their loved ones, since no one knows when you'd be saying your goodbyes to them. That was exactly what happened. Sabo died without Luffy being able to say his final farewell. One moment, they were laughing and having fun finding scraps to repair their treehouse. And then the next, Blue Jam and his men came, hired by Sabo's father. Ace and Luffy were too weak to do anything and Sabo was taken from them, as simple as that. It all happened in a matter of days and Luffy was having a hard time accepting it. He was on the cliff, laying on the grass, weeping. He was clutching his straw hat, wanting to hide from the world. It was a beautiful day with clear skies and seagulls chirping, but he couldn't find the energy to admire its beauty. This place was the same one where they all declared their dreams. Sabo's dream of sailing and living freely would remain unfulfilled, Luffy thought, adding another burden to his heart. The memories they shared kept repeating in his mind. He drowned in them, whether it was a happy or sad one. Because the bitter truth struck him hard. All Luffy had of Sabo now was the memories. Those memories comfort him in these hard times, radiating on his bones and fueling him to keep going. He heard familiar footsteps approaching, but Luffy was too wallowed in self-pity to care. He heard a deep breath, and before he could look up, a punch landed on his head. Luffy didn't react, knowing that he deserved what he got. How much longer are you gonna mop there? Ace asked in monotone. Luffy bit down his lips, burying his face more. He didn't understand how Ace could be better now. He wanted to feel that too, but he couldn't possibly lie to himself. He needed the time to mourn but didn't know how long it would take. The treasure we were hiding in the forest is gone now, Ace continued. The survivors from Blue Jam's crew or the military probably found it. But I don't care about that anymore. Luffy was still, silently listening to Ace. Sabo didn't need it after all, so I'll just let it go, too. It's no use having a treasure if you can't protect it. Ace Luffy whimpered as his whole body trembled. I want to become strong. He was weak, that's why they lost Sabo. Guilt rang inside him, knowing that they never attempted to do anything to help their brother. They put all their trust in him, but it's not enough. The truth was that they have forsaken him. Sabo died without anyone at his side, when he needed his brothers the most. More and more, more and more, more and more. Luffy gritted his teeth. I want to become even stronger. Then I can protect anything. I don't have to lose anybody ever again. Luffy hated this feeling of helplessness. He shed every last tear inside, but regret still hangs on. Sorrow was ever present and it would always be a part of him. He would forever carry it till his last breath. The pain was unbearable and it was hard to carry. And he wondered what his life would be like if he once again experienced something similar to this. I beg you, Luffy cried out. Ace, please don't die. Ace's reaction was instant and expected. He landed his fist on his little brother's head once again. Worry about yourself first. You're far weaker than me, Ace screamed, leaning closer to his face. Listen Luffy, I'll never die. Somehow, hearing those words gave Luffy the light he needed to escape from darkness. Ace was all he had now. The once three brothers lost one of their own. It was just the two of them and they had to make sure they would live. Luffy sat up, nodding. Sabo told me to take care of you, Ace added in a determined tone. I promise that I'll never die. How can I leave a weak brother like you behind? Luffy kept on nodding. I'm not smart so I don't know what killed Sabo, but it's something opposed to freedom. Sabo died before he knew freedom. We exchanged a cup of sake and we're alive. Sabo was robbed by this world. He spent half of his life living to be the perfect son. His parents were not caring about what he really felt. Luffy hoped that the time they spent together would give Sabo the happiness he deserved. Sabo got the freedom into choosing who he would love and he chose Ace and Luffy. And for Luffy, that meant everything. As the wind blew softly, cradling its freshness in, Luffy would never forget Ace's next words. We have to live our lives with no regrets. Ace said firmly, courage enlaced in his voice. Regretting their decisions won't change the past. Sabo was dead and he would never come back. All they could do now was honor his memory by living on his dreams. Sabo's passionate will was passed on to them. Ace and Luffy will do everything to make sure his will lives on. Ace is gonna die? Luffy questioned in disbelief. Luffy threw the newspaper away, not reading the rest of the article's content. He removed his straw hat, grabbing his brother's Vivre card hidden on the back of the ribbon. As expected. It's still burning, more than half of its original size. But for how long? Hey, Luffy. Sabo, his other older brother who he just learned was alive, put his hands on his shoulders. He held him securely. Calm down. Luffy was unmoving. He was staring at Sabo in a catatonic stupor. He gaped, not sure if he would breathe or rather scream. Luffy was sure it was happening again. He never learned from his mistake. His no concern over his brother's safety was a stupid decision. Luffy knew he was hurt for weeks now and he didn't do anything to help him. Ace. Luffy mumbled, color fading from his face. I've got to save Ace. He looked up at Sabo hoping for any help but he got none. His brother sighed, shaking his head. Luffy could feel the disappointment washed over him. Sabo's hold on him only tightened. What do I do? Where are they holding the execution? Luffy demanded. It will happen in Marineford a week from now, Koala answered in a defeated voice. What? But that's so soon. How long does it take to travel here to Sabaody? More than a week. Sabo shuddered. I can't meet up with my crew at this point. It's all going to be over for Ace. You are in no condition to rescue him. He's already in Impel Down. Sabo elucidated calmly. So what? Luffy rebutted as his fists clenched. Impel Down is the world's toughest prison. Once inside, there's no way that you'd be able to escape. Koala stated solemnly, looking down. Ace is from the Whitebeards, right? Sabo asked. Whitebeard is known for never abandoning his men. I am certain he's on the move now to help him. No, no, no. I can't stand here and just wait. Luffy insisted with a cry. Please, Sabo, help me rescue him. I cannot. I have my own responsibilities here. Sabo closed his eyes. He refused, stubborn about his decision. Revolutionaries do not work well together with pirates. It was too late for a rescue, Luffy. Koala is right. Impel Down is known to be impenetrable. All you have to do now is to have faith that Whitebeard will save him at Marineford. The last time I trusted my brother to get himself out of trouble, I thought he died. Sabo's hazel eyes widened. He released his hold on Luffy. Luffy stared at him with willpower. He knew he couldn't do this alone. His crew was away from him, separated across the world. Sabo was all he had now. Luffy wanted to believe in Sabo and that everything would be alright. But he just couldn't stand still and wait for Ace's rescue. He had to do it himself if he wanted that outcome. Because if he didn't chase after Ace, Luffy knew he would live to regret it. Please, Sabo, Luffy pleaded in a heartful tone. Sabo shook his head. With a heavy breath, he apologized. I am sorry, Luffy. And those words devastated him. For Luffy and Ace, Sabo is their brother whom they thought they had lost. They laughed, cried, and lived together. It was the three of them against the world, always having each other's back. Sabo is their everything and they would do whatever it takes to make sure he stayed in their lives now. But for Sabo, Ace and Luffy are strangers. He has no memory of them. He didn't remember that time they exchanged sake and became sworn brothers. He didn't remember that time they built the treehouse together. He didn't remember that time he sacrificed himself so that Ace and Luffy could live. The Sabo they knew was gone and he is never going back. It hurts. He found the brother whom he thought died long ago. In exchange, he learned that his other brother was about to meet his impending end. And what's more, Sabo didn't want anything to do with Ace. But Luffy mumbled, thinking of an excuse, but his mind was blank. Luffy didn't finish his sentence. He remembered his words earlier and it was hypocritical of him to force Sabo into doing something he clearly didn't want. He was the one who said that it was fine if Sabo didn't want them in his life. He was already happy here and Luffy can't take away that happiness. He ran with no particular destination in mind. He could hear everyone calling him to come back but he paid them no heed. He let his legs take him wherever, as long as it would lead him to his brother. He allowed the Vivre card to flow freely, letting it be his guide. He felt like the long gray corridors didn't end. He needed to get out of here as fast as he could. But before he could get through the exit, he noticed the staircase they went through earlier. An idea came to his mind. Luffy sprinted up to the second floor. He remembered it being on the right wing, last room. Arriving, he took notice of the door he destroyed earlier. It was still not repaired and Luffy easily slipped through inside the room. His father stood on the balcony, long raven hair blowing alongside the wind. He immediately noticed him as if he was waiting for his arrival. Dragon looked back with the same neutral expression he was always wearing. Luffy's hands were placed on his knees as he breathed heavily. Dad. Luffy called out helplessly. I need your help. You consider Fire Fist Ace as your brother? Dragon asked simply. Yeah. Luffy stood up straight, confused about how his father knew about the fact, but he shrugged it off. I want to rescue him. I see. Dragon heaved a sigh. I hope you are well aware of how great of a war it will be. You will just be an ant in the eyes of your enemies, easy to be eradicated anytime they want. Even if that's the case, Luffy bared his teeth, meeting his father's eyes. I want to go. I already know what it felt like to lose a brother. I swear not to lose anyone ever again. There was a deafening lack of noise in the room as the father and son stared at each other. The breeze blew more harshly, scattering some documents laying on his father's desk. Luffy could almost hear the beating of his heart, fast and clear. This was his last hope as he couldn't think of another way of getting off this island on his own. Very well, Dragon gave a proud smirk and Luffy's heart hooped in joy. Sabo, I have a new mission for you. Luffy peered back, not realizing that his brother had followed him here. What is it, Dragon-san? Sabo maintained his cool demeanor. Portgas Ace is a commander of the Whitebeard pirates. The world government could easily use him as leverage against Whitebeard. In no time, it could be a major war, causing catastrophe everywhere. It could change the tide of the era as we know it. Dragon explained. Infiltrating Impel Down is the only way. Contact Ivankov to create a plan together. It is time. I understand. Sabo nodded. Accordingly. A smile formed on his lips. Thank you, Dragon-san. We will leave as soon as possible. Thank you, Dad. Luffy shouted in joy. Luffy felt Sabo's hand on his shoulders again. Luffy looked up at him, grinning ever so brightly. Let's go rescue Ace? Sabo asked in a blissful tone. Yes. Luffy jumped, hugging him. The revolutionaries have an effective way of doing things. Communication was the main key as information easily traveled across their base. Each corps was working on providing things they would need for their rescue mission. Luffy tried not to whine or complain to Sabo, not wanting to annoy him any longer. Sabo was already doing the best he could, grumbling would only make his job harder. He just watched sideways as Sabo kept giving orders to his colleagues. There was admiration in Luffy's eyes as he looked at his older brother. Luffy assumed that Sabo was the top personnel in their organization as everyone followed the order he was giving. There was an air of integrity and courage around Sabo that made him respectable. If there was an arising problem, Sabo was cool about it and immediately thought of a solution. Luffy was glad to see that some things didn't change about Sabo. He was still great at analyzing problems and providing the best solution for things. He seemed to be more confident, too. Seeing him interacting with his comrades made Luffy think that he was made for this job. As they went to the docks, Sabo still had time to explain everything to him. Luffy learned that he was already on the new world on the island of Baltigo. White soil surrounded the whole island and it's all Luffy could see as they traveled in carriages. Though, the thought of being in the new world without his crew saddened him. Finally, after 4 hours of preparation, they were all on board a shipping vessel as big as the Going Merry had been. Luffy counted that there was a total of 5 people on board whom he had already met earlier. "Are we ready to set sail?" Luffy asked in enthusiasm. He was on the deck, looking out to the sea. "The anchor is being raised as of the moment," Koala answered. "If I were you, I'd go inside. A storm is on its way." "Really? I'd like to see it. It can also help me wash away the dirt on my body." Koala snorted. "Suit yourself." She looked over at Sabo with dead serious eyes. "Don't let him out of sight. Next thing we know, he's already thrown overboard." "I know," Sabo chuckled as Koala rolled her eyes. "So why aren't we leaving yet?" Luffy asked again, eyeing Koala who went inside the cabin. "We're still waiting for Dragon-san," Sabo said. "Oh, I didn't know he's coming with us." Sabo smiled. "No, but he will help us. You'll see soon enough." Luffy nodded, still confused. He held still on the railings once the ship started moving along the waves. He grinned brightly as their voyage was about to begin. But before they could traverse a few meters away from the island, a storm began to form. Luffy was not a stranger when it comes to the Grand Line's weird weather habits. The dark skyline only became darker as the saturated clouds covered the bright moon. A sudden thunder was heard, deafening and piercing. The night sky lit up with lightning bolts flashing across. The angry waves smacked the side of the boat, causing them to sway. Luffy was almost thrown overboard until Sabo had held him in his place. Gusts of strong winds became stronger, causing the boat to move on its own. Luffy closed his eyes, letting the raindrops hit his face and soak his whole body. It was a good way to wash away the sand he had accumulated on the way. Even in such harsh weather conditions, Luffy smiled and enjoyed the thunderstorm. He remembered that time back in Logtown before his crew finally entered the Grand Line. There was a storm similar to this and it made their journey much more exciting. The rain didn't stop them from declaring their dreams as they stomped their feet on the barrel. "Look, Sabo! The wind is helping us sail away," Luffy exclaimed, looking at his brother with a wide smile. "This is Dragon-san's ability." Sabo wiped down his face after a splash of seawater was thrown into him. "This will help us terminate 1 day of travel time. He only uses it if it's really an emergency." "Oh yeah? That's such a cool power. But mine's always cooler." Luffy looked back at Baltigo, which was becoming smaller by the minute, waving his hands. "Bye, Dad. We'll see each other again." Upon uttering those words, Luffy heard a whisper in the wind. "Go and save your brother. Luffy will make sure Ace will keep his promise." He had Sabo and his father to thank for that. Luffy was bored. He rarely felt this way when sailing. He was born to be a pirate after all. Back when he was still traveling in the Sunny, his crew was always there to entertain him. Usopp would tell endless unbelievable stories, Brook would sing lovely pirate shanties, or Chopper would play countless games with him. His journey to being the freest pirate of all was memorable because of them. But now, after being away from his crew for a few days, Luffy was starting to feel the toll. He was happy he was with Sabo, but his older brother was overworking himself into thinking plans on how to save Ace. Luffy didn't want to be called childish by Sabo. He had grown so much ever since they last met. Luffy was alright to be bored if it meant saving Ace. He just focused his mind on thinking about the future. The 3 of them together once again, causing havoc everywhere they went. They were all inside the cabin except for the helmsman. Luffy was sitting in the far corner, slumped over the table. He had no choice but to watch the revolutionaries write and discuss things. He was only half listening as he didn't understand most of their topics. He was feeling drowsy but didn't want to lie down. "Luffy," Sabo called out, putting the papers he was reading down. Luffy hummed. "It's inappropriate to stare at Hack or any person for that matter." "Oh, I didn't mean to." Luffy blinked hastily. "I'm sorry, Mr. Fishy. I'm just zoning out." "Mr. Fishy?" Koala put a hand on her lips, hiding a smile. "That's a weird nickname." Hack raised an eyebrow as he tapped multiple papers on the desk. He has a talent for giving people amusing nicknames. Koala snickered. I'm surprised you didn't give me one, Luffy. Koala is already a cool name. Luffy gave her a toothy grin. Thank you. It just occurred to me that we haven't had the pleasantries. Hack cleared his throat. My name is Hack. I teach fishman karate to the children in the army. I have taught your brother ever since he joined our organization. I'm Luffy and I want to be the Pirate King. So I've heard, Hack said. I have been watching your escapades ever since you're in East Blue. I read that you're the one who defeated Sawtooth Arlong. Yeah, what about it? Out of the corner of his eyes, Luffy saw Koala shuddering and bowing her head. I am merely curious about what's the bad blood between the two of you. Luffy's eyebrows furrowed, scowling. He broke his promise with Nami and made her cry. No one gets away with hurting my friends. I see. Hack closed his eyes as if deep in thought. And does that experience influence your views over fishmen? Nope, Luffy answered quickly, shrugging. I met Hachi in Sabaody. He was super nice to us and even made us takoyaki. There's also Kami and Papag who toured us in the archipelagos. Kami was kidnapped because of us. The slavers wanted her, 'cause she's a mermaid. We had to rescue her. She doesn't deserve that. Koala wondered. You saved her? That's why you punched that celestial dragon. He had it coming. Kami is my friend and I want her to be happy. I want to say thank you for your actions, Luffy. Koala's tensed body started relaxing. Why? It just meant a lot to me. She sighed heavily before smiling sadly. Back then, a fishman named Fisher Tiger saved me. Seeing what you did back there makes me think of him. Oh, you're welcome. Luffy grinned. I guess I did it for Sabo, too. First, that incident on Eni's lobby, then punching a celestial dragon. What's next for you, Luffy? Sabo questioned with humor in his tone, shaking his head. Luffy laughed. Breaking into Impel Down. They all shared laughter at that point. Luffy thought that maybe he would get used to this. There are still 5 days till they arrive at their destination. Plenty of time to get to know his brother's friends. On their second day of travel, they already need to dock. Luffy was still inside the room he shared with Sabo. He was laying on the bed, stirring occasionally. He had his eyes closed, trying to nap but it didn't work. He had too much on his mind. He knew they were already docked as the waves didn't sway the ship as much as before. He heard a knock on the door and Luffy opened his eyes. Sabo entered, wearing more casual clothing than his usual one, still wearing his cravat. It looked like he just finished taking a shower as his blonde hair was still dripping wet. Why did we stop here? Luffy inquired, rolling in his bed. The food supply is running low. Sabo used his hand to comb his hair. He realized what he said and immediately reassured his brother. It's not your fault. We're more than happy to feed you. These things normally happen when traveling. I guess so. Luffy hugged the pillow closer. Hey, what's wrong? Sabo went over next to his side. I'm about to ask you if you want to sightsee the island. Hack and Delvin are already taking care of the food supply. We'd be back traveling again in 2 hours. Rescuing Ace is our priority after all. Luffy pouted. I don't wanna. You told me this is the new world. I want to be with my crew experiencing it for the first time. Fair enough, Sabo smiled. Luffy blinked. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we can so that we can spend time with each other. That's on my mind. But we can still have fun while. Luffy narrowed his eyes while looking at his brother. Sabo's reaction was instant as his eyes quickly stared outside. His whole body tensed up as if sensing danger nearby. Sabo, intruders. The two brothers jumped up from the bed upon hearing Koala's yelling voice. Once stepping on deck, they saw 10 men holding arms and weapons. The bandits were laughing as if ridiculing them. Koala was in her fighting stance, ready to defend their ship. This seems to be a nice boat. Would you mind handing it over to us? One of the guys said. He was holding a giant axe, bigger than his own body. Sabo just smiled nicely, taunting them. And what makes you think we would give up easily? You're the one who needs to be on the lookout. Here I go. Luffy guffawed. His arms stretched as far as they could. Gomu Gomu no, pistol. His opponent was too shocked to see his arm stretching. He didn't have time to react. Luffy's punch quickly landed on his opponent's face, throwing the man overboard. The other intruders could only look at him with wide eyes. Luffy, that's very inconsiderate of you. Sabo sighed heavily. But Sabo, they're trying to fight us. Luffy whined as his arm redacted back. Tsk tisk, Sabo smirked. Leave some for Koala and me, will you? Luffy roared with laughter. Will do. The fight broke out as soon as the bandits started squaring them. Without missing a beat, the two revolutionaries and the pirate attack. They may have the advantage in numbers but Luffy was sure they could easily handle them. The next guy who charged Luffy was holding 2 guns in both hands. He had a smug look on his face. As the gunshots were heard, Luffy crossed his arms next to his face. With his body, Luffy caught the 4 bullets fired. It only bounced back, causing the bullets to be shot randomly. Luffy punched the guy, causing him to be unconscious. "Oh no, you don't!" Koala yelled. Luffy looked back, seeing that she had protected him from an incoming sword attack. "Thanks, Koala. You're welcome. Now, let's beat these guys up." "I know," Luffy snickered. In the corner of his eyes, he was still watching Koala fight. She was doing a great job all by herself. With 2 attackers incoming, she threw in a punch that caused a shockwave that sent them flying. Luffy focused back on his own fight. The next guy who charged him was much bigger than the rest of them. Luffy could feel something different about him. He sensed that he was on a different level than the rest. As the guy threw his fist, Luffy dodged it, but the next attack came faster than the first. His fist came in contact with Luffy's skin. Luffy was sent flying, hitting the wooden wall. "You've gotta be kidding me." Luffy gritted his teeth. He rubbed his abdomen, wondering why the attack hurt him so much. His opponent chuckled. "What a catch! You're that pirate Straw Hat Luffy, right? Your bounty would be me. I would appreciate it if you let him go." Sabo quickly appeared on his back. He karate chopped the back of his neck, causing the bandit to lose consciousness. "Phew." Koala stretched her back. "So that's the last one?" "Pipsqueaks, all of them. We didn't even break a sweat." "That hurts," Luffy grumbled, pouting. He stood straight after recovering. "I'm made of rubber, so why does that hurt?" "Devil fruit users are not invincible, you know," Sabo explained sympathetically. "He used hockey on you. Do you want a demonstration?" "Sure." Sabo started pinching Luffy's cheeks, making the pirate yelp in pain. Luffy backed away, eyes closed. He started rubbing the affected area with a pout. "Ow." Luffy blabbered. Sorry. Sabo smiled apologetically as his arms turned back to normal. Hockey can bypass Devil Fruit's ability. It's especially an effective measure against Logias. But unlike Seastone, who nullifies, armament hockey solidifies the body. "That's awesome," Luffy said in awe. "Hockey would really help you survive better in the new world." Sabo shared as he inclined on the ship's railings. "Can you teach me?" Whoa, one thing at a time. We still have things we need to deal with." "I'm surprised there's little to no damage the ship has taken," Koala commented as she dusted the dirt off her hands. "Hey now, don't jinx us," Sabo sighed. "I thought the new world would be much more exciting," Luffy commented in a bored tone. "You've barely scratched the surface. Most pirates coming from paradise rarely last a week here. Thankfully, the bandits who attacked us were amateurs." Koala explained to him. "I know that." Luffy bit his lips. He let out a yawn while stretching his back. "I think I'm gonna sleep now. Dinner would be ready in an hour once Delvin and Hack are back. Don't you want to wait for it first?" Sabo asked. "Nope, just set aside food for me, please." Luffy managed to smile. Sabo and Koala watched as the pirate went back to the room. "If you were to go on a vacation, where would you want to go?" The first one was Zoro. He was already hurt earlier from his fight with the Marine Admiral. And with one slap from Kuma, he seemingly vaporized, disappearing right in front of their eyes. Brook stood up against the Warlord, sacrificing himself for Usopp and Sanji, and he was next. Usopp was riddled with fear. He still dared to fight as he tried attacking Kuma, but he failed miserably. Sanji couldn't take it anymore. He made a stand against him but was also quickly swatted away. Frankie was next after he used all his might to punch Kuma in the face. Kuma didn't even budge an inch. Nami was begging him to help her. It was the same words she said back then. Only this time, Luffy was too late. Chopper was on his monster point, uncontrollable. He was berserk, but Luffy knew he only wanted to protect the crew. "Stop it. That's enough," Luffy begged. He could only clench his fists as tears stung his eyes. Then the last one was Robin. She called his name, reaching out her hands. And as simple as that, she also vanished. He fell to his knees, hitting his head on the ground multiple times. It hurts, but not as much as the mental anguish he was experiencing. He wept, not knowing what else to do. "What's wrong with me?" Luffy bawled as questioned himself. "I couldn't even save anyone." One by one, he watched helplessly as his crew faded. They have come far on their journey, halfway through reaching their dreams. And yet, it ended right there, as simple as that. A touch. It took them just one touch to lose. Luffy was weak, and that's the reason why he couldn't save any of them. He made a promise to himself back then that he would be strong, that he would never experience losing someone ever again. He broke that promise, and this time, it was a lot worse. He was right there with them and he had no excuse for not helping. He was truly alone now. A useless captain who could only stare as he lost everyone he cared for. This would be the last time we would meet. Farewell. As the bubbles popped, so was he disappearing into thin air. When Luffy woke up, his whole body was trembling. His eyes fluttered open, trying to get used to his dark surroundings. It took him a minute to realize that he wasn't aboard the Sunny. There's no Zoro who was snoring or Frankie who was mumbling about cola whilst asleep. It's been a week since Luffy last saw them. And it would take a while for them to set sail again as they were scattered across the world. Luffy hugged the blanket closer to his body, wanting to feel warm. He wondered if they were near a winter island since he hadn't felt this cold for a while. He took in a few shivering breaths, wanting to calm down his racing heart. He closed his eyes once more, wanting sleep to take him back in, but it failed. Premonitory chills sent shivers down his spine and his blanket was too thin to protect him from it. He sat up, rubbing his hands against each other. He sniffed, wiping his runny nose. He let his eyes wander outside the glass windows. His hunch turned out to be correct. The snow fell silently. Luffy watched sleepily as the flakes descended, silver and dark. The moon was crescent, still bright enough to bring natural light. Thin gray clouds surrounded the sky and he was sad that the stars weren't visible to the eye tonight. The cabin they were in was spacious enough for 2 people. On one wall, there was a small shelf full of dusty books. 2 beds were placed on each side. In the middle, there was a nightstand. Luffy lazily stood up to open the lamp, allowing artificial light to lit the room. He went back to his bed, still sitting, legs crossed. His black eyes fell on his older brother. Even in his sleep, his brother didn't seem to be at ease. Luffy knew there was something wrong with him at that moment. There's a frown forming on Sabo's face. Then he started stirring, back and forth. In an instant, Sabo's breathing was quick and he started mumbling before screaming. Seeing his brother struggling, Luffy immediately went over next to his brother, the blanket still wrapped around him. "Sabo?" Luffy mumbled, tugging him slightly. Sabo didn't wake up. His breathing became heavier as veins on his face and neck throbbed. Luffy continued shaking him, wanting to make sure he was all right. With one final slap on his face, Sabo's hazel eyes opened, shooting himself up. Luffy released a sigh of relief. "Are you okay?" His brother was still trembling as he gulped. Sabo stared at him with uncertainty before looking around the room with paranoia and suspicion. He took in more shaky breaths before finally calming down. Using his hands, he scrubbed his face, washing away the fatigue he was feeling. "I'm fine now," Sabo answered in a low voice. "What was that?" Luffy asked worriedly. "Nightmares." Sabo bit his lower lip. "Sorry about waking you up." "You didn't. I was already awake." "Why?" "Same as yours." Silence engulfed the room as they were both lost in thought. Luffy did the one thing he could do. He wrapped his arms around his brother, embracing him. Sabo flinched but didn't say anything. It took Sabo a minute to give in, allowing his body to ease up, welcoming the heat Luffy was giving. Luffy closed his eyes, breathing in his brother's smell. It smelled like the sea and freedom, giving him the comfort he wanted. For both of them, that's exactly what they needed. "Do you want to talk about it?" Luffy asked after a while. "Do you?" Sabo questioned back. "I do. Makino told me that talking helps when you have a bad dream." "I suppose that is true," Sabo said lethargically. Noticing that Sabo was squirming, Luffy let go of his hug. He settled his head on Sabo's shoulders. Luffy patiently waited for him to collect his thoughts. "Being a revolutionary is hard." Sabo breathed. "I get assigned to countless missions and I get to see everything. And by everything, I mean every single crime against humanity there is. War brings out the worst in people and there are things I wish to forget." Luffy held his brother's right hand, squeezing it hard. He listened, letting Sabo voice out what he was feeling. "It happened almost 6 months ago," Sabo continued in a quaky voice. "Vera was a country in the middle of a civil war. There I met a young boy no older than 10. He had no one as his family was killed in a conflict. He's always smiling but I knew deep down he was just trying to be brave. I made a promise to him that I will give him a home here in Baltigo once we win B-But." Luffy looked at him with worried eyes. His brother was trying his best to maintain his sang-froid expression and yet his emotions ended up being too much for him to handle. "A military personnel that I thought I already killed took his gun out. He was shot right in front of my eyes. It was instant death. I believe it's much better than to see him suffer." "You blame yourself?" Luffy asked in a whisper. "I do. His lifeless eyes still haunt me to this day. He's not the first boy who died in the middle of a war and certainly not the last." Sabo continued. "It is the ultimate goal of the Revolutionary Army. A future with no wars nor tyranny. It is the reason why I am still alive and fighting. Till my last breath, I will make sure that dream will come true." Luffy finally let out a smile. "Your dream is too noble. Sabo was holding too many responsibilities on his shoulders. Luffy wanted to help him even if it was just by talking. Maybe deep down, Luffy knew Sabo was never meant to be a pirate. He could never turn a blind eye to the inhumane things he had seen and experienced beforehand. So would you like to share about yours? Sabo asked after a while. It's about Bear Guy, Luffy revealed. His name is Kuma. Bear Guy. Kuma. Bear Guy. Sabo sighed in defeat. Go on. I dreamt of my crew. Luffy nuzzled his face on Sabo's neck. He defeated us with a touch. And I thought I lost everyone. When he's about to touch me, I just accepted it. The last thing in my mind was how powerless I am and that I couldn't protect anyone. He was weak in all his life, he wanted to be strong. First, it was to prove to Shanks that he could be the Pirate King. Secondly, was that he never wanted to lose anyone again after Sabo's supposed death. Thirdly, was that he's trying to ease Ace's worry as the older brother. Lastly, there are his comrades who have every faith in his strength. He was weak but he needed to be strong. He's a pirate captain now in his own right. There are 9 people who believe and will follow him till the ends of Earth. All he ever wanted was to protect everyone he ever loved. Luffy clenched his fist. That's why I want to save Ace no matter what. Sabo kept him close. He placed a palm on Luffy's back, rubbing it affectionately. Do you hate Kuma? Nope. Luffy suppressed a yawn escaping from his mouth. If I'm alive and fine, I'm sure my crew is, too. I guess he made us realize that we're still not ready yet. I can still grow stronger. It's good to know that you're turning a negative thing into something positive. Sabo finally cracked a smile. It's not that I am making excuses for Kuma, but he is a man you can trust. He saved you. Yup, and besides, Luffy also grinned brightly. Thanks to him, I learned that my brother is still around. He brought us together and I want to thank him for that. Are you fine now? Is there anything you want to talk about? No, why? Well, Sabo hesitated, eyes darting. You're not worried about Ace? I am, but I know everything will be all right, Luffy replied with certainty. Why? Because I have you, Luffy's smile widened. Sabo's face mellowed and before he could reply, Luffy's stomach growled. Your stomach knows when to ruin a moment. Sabo chuckled. Wanna rampage the kitchen with me? Luffy asked excitedly, eyes twinkling. We can eat all the meat. I haven't eaten dinner yet. Food can taste so much better if he has company. The two brothers went to the kitchen for a midnight snack. Sabo? Koala is asking for you, Luffy said as he approached his brother. Sabo was on deck, sitting with his legs crossed. It was a beautiful sunny day with gusts of wind giving them a cool atmosphere. Sabo was in a good mood but there were still bags under his eyes. He looked at Luffy, holding a Den Den mushi in his hand. What is it? Sabo inquired. Koala said that Kara something is making contact, Luffy explained. Karasu, Sabo corrected while snapping his fingers. Yeah, that guy. If that is the case, he already got my message. You ought to make things clear with him. Karasu will be your backup. Oh hi, Dad, Luffy greeted, immediately recognizing his voice. Hello, Luffy. I'll leave you two alone to talk. As you said, I am needed elsewhere. Sabo stated mischievously. Okay, Luffy agreed, blinking. Luffy could hear his father muttering under his breath. He watched as his older brother excused himself and went inside the cabin. Sabo had a wicked smirk plastered on his lips and Luffy didn't understand why. And just like that, the silence was deafening. Luffy didn't know what to do. He stared at the Den Den mushi wondering if his father had already hung up. He didn't know how these transponder snails work so he didn't bother looking. Luffy closed his eyes, breathing in the fresh air. The sound of waves always gave him a therapeutic feel. Luffy, are you still there? His father asked, breaking the quietness between them. Yeah. How are you? Holding up? Luffy thought that they were going down that route. A simple chit-chat and Luffy liked it that way. I'm fine. I'm enjoying my time with Sabo and he's really helping me lots. That's good to hear. They were back to silence again. Luffy fidgeted, swaying his body back and forth. He was usually talkative but what does a normal father and son talk about? You've been in the news lately and your bounty is rising fast. Luffy could hear a tinge of proudness in his tone. He laughed. It's not my fault trouble is always following me everywhere. His father let out a lone chuckle. Tell me, what is your goal? I want to be the freest man in the seas, Luffy answered firmly as the wind gushed harshly. What a glorious dream, it is. Dragon enunciated with pride. Tell me about your crew. Ah, now they were talking. There's Zoro and he likes sleeping and drinking booze. Nami loves money and she's always making sure we're on a budget. Usopp is great at telling stories and... They continued talking for an hour. Luffy would gladly share his adventures with anyone who wanted to hear it. He treasured it deeply and it was the proof of his existence. Ace hated his father and Sabo ran away from his own. Luffy was happy Dragon turned out to be a great man. He would like to talk with him again someday. Why do we need to get out of the ship again? Luffy asked, bored. His feet kept kicking a stone as they walked. Because the coding mechanic can't work properly with people on board. Don't worry, it will only be for an hour. Sabo replied patiently. Haven't I already explained this to you? Luffy snickered. I forgot. They arrived at Risky Red Island after 6 days of travel. It's one of the first 3 islands being pointed by the log pose upon entering the New World. The island offers ship coding to go back to paradise, instead of crossing the red line through the port controlled by the Marines. This island was tamer compared to what lies ahead in the New World. Sabo and Luffy were wandering on their own in the middle-sized town. Koala insisted that they should spend some time with each other. It was a beautiful sunny day. The flea market was buzzing with people early in the morning. Each stand was offering artisan and food products. The buzzing of people didn't stop as they bargained for their goods. Heightening his senses, Sabo was as cautious as he could be. In his experience, one can never be at ease when your job is literally to overthrow the government. There's also Luffy he needed to make sure to not cause any trouble. He was a world-renowned pirate now and people ought to recognize him. For a supposed disguise, he let Luffy wear sunglasses and floral polo that matched his straw hat, looking like a tourist. I'm surprised you agreed to take a stroll with me, Sabo said as their eyes met. I realized it can't be helped. And besides, there are still thousands of islands for me to explore with my crew. Luffy beamed, clenching his fists. In the few days Sabo had known the pirate, one of his best qualities was his optimism that never seemed to falter. Risky Red is a pretty boring town if you ask me, Sabo commented. Yeah, I'm sure there's. Luffy stopped midway. His eyes grew large upon seeing a food stand. He grabbed Sabo's hands and directed him in its direction. Look, Sabo, ramen. Sabo was dragged towards the stand by an eager Luffy who's always famished. It seemed like the shop just opened for the day and the brothers were the first customers. The old cook was delighted when they ordered 5 bowls each. They took their seats in the booth, watching as their order was being made in front of them. I remember this one time Ace took us to eat ramen. Ramen is your favorite? Luffy babbled as his feet jiggled. Ramen is my favorite? Sabo raised an eyebrow. Oh, it's not anymore? Luffy asked, not hiding his dismay with a pout. What is it then? Sabo mumbled, unsure of what to answer since no one had asked him about that before. I do enjoy drinking tea and eating biscuits in my spare time. Luffy giggled. I'll let you have Sanji's tea. He makes them really good and it makes me sleepy. The first bowl was served to them in under 5 minutes. Without missing a beat, Luffy inhaled the whole thing. The cook was surprised, laughing in delight. He immediately turned to make more for them. As the cook and Luffy talked, Sabo had a slower approach. Being a revolutionary, it was unusual for him to indulge in gourmet meals. He made sure to savor the experience and this was deemed to be a nice break. Do you like it? Luffy inquired, halting his eating just to check him out. Yeah, I can see now why it used to be my favorite. Giving him a toothy grin, Luffy went back to slurping. They ate quickly as they were expected to be back in under 30 minutes. Once done, Luffy thanked the cook. He was about to leave until Sabo stopped him. Sabo kept forgetting that Luffy was a pirate through and through. Not paying for food was to be expected. Sabo paid for all of it and gave an extra tip. They started walking back to where their ship was docked. They made sure it was well hidden this time, not wanting to raise any unwanted suspicion now that they were closer to the Marine headquarters. Luffy kept on babbling about how he wanted Sabo to meet his crew. It would be a while before that and Sabo found himself looking forward to it. There you are, Koala greeted, arms crossing over her chest. She was standing on the deck, waiting for their arrival. No problems this time? None at all, milady, Sabo replied with a smile. Shocking. Koala rolled her eyes. There's still no news of Whitebeard's whereabouts, even our informants are clueless, Hack announced as he folded the newspaper. That only means he's planning something big, Sabo replied, snapping his fingers. The whole boat is really inside of a bubble. Luffy exclaimed in awe. How would we go inside? It might pop. It will withstand. Step in. Koala offered her hand to the pirate. Luffy extended his arms, accepting Koala's offer. Luffy wrapped his other arm around Sabo. Before Sabo could voice out any thoughts, they went on flying, entering the coated ship. Sabo lost his balance and landed on the floor, face first. Luffy landed perfectly. Sorry. Luffy laughed apologetically. Koala snickered, covering her lips with her hand. Ah, Sabo-kun didn't see that one coming. Anything that involves me failing is funny to you, Sabo grumbled, standing up and maintaining his composure. He rearranged his top hat. That's because You're too serious these days. Loosen up. Koala rebutted back. You're the one who's always saying that I'm childish, Sabo replied. He knew Koala was just looking after him as this week has been hellish, to say the least. Maybe not that childish, Koala shrugged with a smile. Have you met Luffy? But that's not a bad thing. Luffy scowled. Your silliness has been most charming. Don't worry about it. Sabo smiled at him. Children, Hack cleared his throat. Are we ready to go? Yes, Sabo sighed deeply, not appreciating the sentiment. On cue, the fishman was next to the valve, opening it. Air started flowing inside the bubble, covering it and giving them breathable oxygen. Sabo and his colleagues were used to this procedure after traveling across the world for years. Their boat started descending downwards in a slow manner. Whoa! Luffy breathed, looking all around his surroundings with wide, curious eyes. Sabo had to agree with Koala about Luffy's childishness. He was childish in a way that he was excited about discovering new things. It's a charming trait he has that made him endearing. It was hard to believe that the 17-year-old was a pirate captain at that moment. Sabo had forgotten that feeling long ago, but Luffy was there to remind him. 1,000 meters down, the sunlight was only a soft hue, barely emitting. From time to time, a school of fishes would swim across their ship, a sight to behold, especially their illuminating colors. The temperature dropped fast and Sabo was glad he was wearing a coat. It was colder than he had last remembered it to be. The two of them remained alone on the deck. Luffy was silent now, a smile still plastered on his lips. He was more focused on enjoying the view. Sabo also found tranquility deep within. The deep sea held many secrets and many more stories to be told. Here, Sabo could forget all his worries and just exist. Luffy? Sabo called upon, noticing that the pirate was only wearing a vest and shorts. Aren't you cold? Luffy blinked. Right after, he shivered, hands rubbing his shoulders. You're right. It's very cold. Let's get inside the cabin? Sabo offered, laughing. No, thanks. I think I can manage. Luffy wiped his nose. Nah, are we going to Fishman Island? No, we're going straight to Sabaody. Good. I think I'd like to experience it with my crew for the first time. Luffy's smile mellowed. I'm sure you'd love the place, Sabo said. There's this one time Koala and I were on our way there. We almost got eaten by a sea king, but the journey was well worth it. Eaten by a sea king? Luffy perked up, always ready to hear about stories. Tell me more. And Sabo relayed the tale. Deep down the ocean, two brothers would go on back and forth telling each other about their adventures, wanting to ease their anxieties. The calm before the storm. Sabaody Archipelago was a beautiful area with a very dark background. The place was packed full of people from everywhere. It's the last place one would dock in if one were to travel across the New World. Whether it's marines, pirates, bounty hunters, or slavers alike, they all meant trouble. No other place in the world has that kind of diversity. The marine headquarters was also close to the place. Even celestial dragons from time to time would roam the islands freely. In short, it's one of the worst places to be if your job was to rebel against the world government. Just before sunset, they managed to dock in Grove 13, a supposed lawless area. Sabo was still fascinated by the uniqueness of the Urukuman mangrove. The forming bubbles that rise and pop up make the place look more innocent. It's been a while since he was last here in this place. It was a beautiful location with a very dark background. Our rendezvous with Karasu-san would be 30 minutes from now. Koala reminded him. Everything is still going smoothly as planned. Half an hour? Luffy echoed, looking over at Sabo. That's still enough time to look. I have to know if my crew is here. Sabo and Koala glanced at each other. It was obvious from Koala's expression that she didn't want to let Luffy go. They already made it this far and one screw-up will end it. The revolutionaries avoided this place for reasons and sightseeing was out of the question. All right, Sabo agreed, much to Koala's exasperation. 10 minutes of adventures, in and out. Yosh! Luffy expressed in a determined expression. But before they could leave, Sabo was frozen in place. His eyes quickly darted to the shore, sensing a great danger approaching. He cursed himself mentally for not noticing it immediately. His hands immediately reached for his pipe, pointing it at the man below. The presence was even stronger than dragons, though it didn't pose them any harm. My, Luffy, you're still looking lively, the old man commented with a chuckle. Rayleigh! Luffy yelled, jumping out of the ship to meet face to face with him. Sabo soon followed, being the one keeping him out of trouble. The remaining revolutionaries were still on board, though watching the reunion unfold. Sabo, this is Rayleigh. Our coding mechanic. Luffy introduced him proudly. Rayleigh, this is Sabo, my brother. Coding mechanic? Sabo sputtered, perplexed by the revelation. He's the right-hand man of the Pirate King. I know, but he's retired anyway, so coding mechanic, it is. Rayleigh boomed in laughter, entertained by the youth. Well, I couldn't argue with that logic. Sabo could only wonder how Luffy came to be in talking terms with the legendary pirate. The Dark King was out of the public for more than 2 decades. Luffy can be terrifying when it comes to forming connections easily with influential persons. Sabo glanced back at his colleagues. They all shared a look of worry. As the saying in their base goes, pirates and revolutionaries rarely work well. Especially a pirate as strong as he was. Sabo knew he was no match with the Dark King, and it would be equal to suicide. One wrong move could cause their entire team. Is anyone back here yet? Luffy asked, straight to the issue. I'm afraid that you're the first one here. I didn't even expect you to be back so soon, Rayleigh said. None of them, huh? Luffy breathed heavily, lowering his head. Luffy here got involved with Kizaru and Kuma helped them escape, Rayleigh explained, looking at Sabo. He told me that he's part of your organization and that he sent Luffy to your base because of his connection with Dragon. Sabo's eyebrows furrowed together, wary about such information being shared. He wanted to believe that Kuma meant no harm, but revealing himself to the retired pirate was still too much. I meant you no harm, Rayleigh reassured, noticing his expression. I have a proposal to make with Luffy, but seeing that you're busy, let's just talk another time. And what business does the Dark King have with a pirate upstart, may I ask? Sabo asked in a polite tone, visibly relaxing. He is just an interesting fellow, Rayleigh smiled genuinely. Me and Sabo are gonna save Ace in Impel Down. If anyone arrives, please tell them that I'll be back soon, Luffy pleaded. Raiding Impel Down? You're getting yourself into more trouble than the last time I saw you. Rayleigh chuckled in amusement. They're gonna execute Ace. He's my brother and I won't let anything stop me. Rayleigh put a hand on Luffy's shoulder. Just be careful out there. There's still so much for you to do. I will, Luffy nodded determinedly. I'll be on my way then. Rayleigh walked away towards the sunset, waving his right hand. Once the old pirate was out of sight, the revolutionaries all heaved a sigh of relief. That was interesting, to say the least. Delvin muttered. Just what kind of people do you interact with, Luffy? Koala asked in exasperation. It could be worse. Hack shrugged, stroking his mustache. Rayleigh's really nice. He saved us many times, Luffy commented, chuckling. His eyes were still twinkling with admiration. So where to next? You're late, Karasu said upon seeing them in the distance. Apologies, we ran into someone. But don't worry about it. Sabo elucidated calmly. They went to Grove 16, which was still part of the lawless area. Sabo made sure Luffy wouldn't run away by holding his hands. Luffy was alerted, eyes darting left to right, looking for any sign of his crew. There was nothing Sabo could do but hold Luffy's hand tighter, wanting to reassure him that everything would be all right. He already had enough on his plate with his brother's execution and the crew's separation. Karasu was the commander of the North Army. Since he was the only one available at the moment, he and his group were tasked by Dragon to help with their mission. Karasu's arms were crossed across his chest, eyeing them with a serious expression. Sabo's face was neutral as they stared at each other. Before everything, I would like to congratulate you on your promotion, Sabo, Karasu said in a genuine tone. He may be wearing a mask, but Sabo was certain the man was smiling underneath it. Who's late now? Sabo taunted. Has it really been that long since we last saw each other? 6 months, and the last time we met, you are still the bold lad who liked to challenge Dragon to a fight, Karasu deadpanned. Koala chuckled. Nothing has changed except that he doesn't have time to spar with Dragon-san with all the work being thrown at him. So this is Crowy, huh? Luffy exclaimed. He looks exactly what I imagined him to be. Sabo leered, liking Karasu's confusion. Luffy, this is Karasu. He will help us get to Impel Down. So it is true, Karasu said, looking over at the pirate and taking in his appearance. He is Dragon's son. Sabo nodded. He instantly heard the other revolutionaries from Karasu's group murmuring. The rumor mill has reached even the farthest of land after all. And your brother, Karasu added in monotone. Why is that? Did Dragon finally give in and sign the papers? Sabo scoffed, rolling his eyes. No, it's a coincidence really. Luffy's saying that we're just sworn brothers. Yup, we shared sake when we were kids. Ace is our brother, too. Luffy grinned. I do hope Dragon-san is not mixing family with his job. Hack shook his head. Portgas D. Ace's execution is the catalyst of the upcoming war. The best way to prevent such a catastrophe is to rescue him. You are right, and I want to make it clear that I never doubted Dragon's decisions, Karasu explained. Let's get to business, shall we? Karasu led them, boarding the marine warship his group had seized. Sabo's eyes darted, inspecting every corner. It looked decent and had no signs of being tampered with. He was sure Karasu already checked everything, but he was never at ease. When are we expected to leave? Delvin asked. This warship has an ETA an hour from now. We successfully seized it with ease and disposed of everyone on board. Karasu elucidated. An hour? That's too soon, Koala reacted, eyebrows burrowing. You will be able to use the gates of justice. We also have the code ready, Karasu briefed the group, tapping his feet. Delvin is the one who will impersonate Commodore Stanford, the one in charge of this ship. The personnel on Impel Down are well aware of your arrival. Half of my men will come with you. What are we waiting for? Let's go! Luffy yelled, fired up for the mission, and it's giving Sabo all the wrong feelings. And what are you planning to do after this? Sabo inquired calmly. That is between Dragon and I. Do not worry about it. I am still your backup. Karasu replied. Chief, here's your disguise. Someone from Karasu's group handed him the marine uniform. Most of Karasu's men would accompany them in their mission, consisting of 50 men. Sabo accepted it. He was used to wearing this disguise by now, though he hated seeing himself in it. The uniform simply didn't suit him. Luffy, as always, was giggling as he put on the button-up shirt. How do I look? Luffy asked, circling and showing off his looks. Sabo smiled in a mellow way. I still prefer the vest. Me too, Luffy agreed, finishing buttoning. You're not you without the cravat. Sabo, Hack called, sounding sincere. He crossed his arms, staring at him. Be careful out there. When did I never? Sabo smirked, joking. Want me to remind you of all the times you didn't? Koala deadpanned as she emerged, now fully clothed with the marine uniform. You're not coming? Luffy frowned, blinking. Have you ever seen a fishman in the ranks of the Marines? Hack said in amusement with a lone chuckle. Nope. Hack grinned. Exactly. We shall depart, Sabo announced, and everyone looked at him. As you wish, Chief, Karasu said. Sabo nodded firmly, maintaining his composure. He admired Karasu ever since he first joined the army. He was a man of caliber, and his mere presence was enough to petrify his enemies. It still didn't sit right with Sabo that the man he idolized was looking up to him for his guidance. It intimidated him, but he trusted himself and his subordinates to make this mission successful. This was the first major mission Dragon had entrusted to. After all, these emotions and thoughts were normal, but he can't possibly falter now. As their leader, his responsibility was to encourage his men and fight till the end. That was what fuels him to move forward. Still, there's a lingering question in his mind. Why were the Marines willing to wage war with Whitebeard and upset the balance of the world? The Marines were exhausting all their might for the upcoming war. But what exactly is their purpose? Why were they doing this now after all these years? Was there more to Port Gastet Ace than he initially had thought? Sabo shook away all the musings. There's no room for distractions, and he needed to focus on the mission. He would have all the answers later once this was over. After they docked next to the line of marine ships, it was time for them to go inside and report to the jailers. 20 men will go, and with Delvin being the one disguised as a marine captain. They left the ship and made their way towards the huge wooden door. Sabo and Luffy were in the back of the troop. It was Sabo's job to keep an eye on the pirate, since he has proven himself to not be trusted when it comes to concealment. The doors opened for them, and with heavy footsteps, they stepped in. The atmosphere inside immediately changed. Sabo felt coldness as chills went down his spine. Dark stone walls were laid upon the long hallway. The light was barely emitting, and Sabo's eyes needed some time to adjust. He could hear low whimpering sounds and occasional screams of mercy. It was exactly what Sabo had expected. There, Sabo immediately recognized Hannibal, the vice warden of Impel Down. He was waiting for their arrival. 2 guards were beside him. The man seemed to have a bored face. From what Sabo had read from the reports, he seemed to have a laid-back personality. Greetings, Commodore Stanford. You are right on time, Hannibal greeted him in a bored tone. I'm afraid Warden Magellan is not here. He's on his bathroom break. Don't you agree that it's much better if I was the ward? Laughter erupted in Luffy's mouth, making Hannibal stop and glare at the supposed marine officer. To make him stop, Sabo stepped on Luffy's foot, making him react loudly. Shoo, Sabo reminded, eyebrows furrowed together. Of course, it would take Luffy under 5 minutes to ruin the plan they spent making for the past week. Luffy immediately stopped, eyes darting sideways, trying to appear innocent. You! Hannibal pointed at him, blood boiling in anger. And what is it that you find funny? He just finds the whole place overwhelming. Do not bother about it. He's not worth the time. Let me deal with him later on. Commodore Stanford, Delvin said sternly. But I believe we are behind schedule, Vice Warden, Delvin said in a tone with no arguments. He tapped his feet aggressively. And if you want to be promoted, tardiness is out of the question. Sabo hid a smirk. Bless Delvin for having a way with words. Hannibal scoffed at him but didn't rebut. They started walking towards the main office and they followed suit. And there Sabo saw a familiar face. Inazuma was hiding in the corner. A pleased grin was on his lips. It's been years since he last saw Inazuma. His looks didn't change at all, as if he was no prisoner in this hellhole. He took a sip on the wine glass he was holding as their eyes met. Sabo looked over at his surroundings, assessing their situation. No one was focused on them right now. And just like that, he grabbed Luffy and put a hand on top of his lips, not wanting the pirate to yell and cause commotion again. Inazuma nodded at them as they stared at each other. Sabo let go of Luffy and gave a stern look that hopefully said to shut up. Luffy mockingly saluted and Sabo could only sigh. The two followed Inazuma silently. They occasionally stopped in their tracks, avoiding guards, and the surveillance camera pointed in their direction. It didn't take them long to arrive at their destination. They halted in front of a wall from a far corner. Inazuma didn't waste time as his hands turned into a scissor, easily cutting through the walls and revealing a secret staircase underneath. That's so. Sabo once again had to put a hand over Luffy's mouth and nose as they went inside the path. Inazuma closed down the walls, concealing them inside. How many times do I have to tell you to shut up? Sabo scolded, lashing out. He let go of Luffy who was finally able to breathe again. Luffy's eyes widened. His body language told Sabo that he didn't expect that kind of outburst from him. He bit down his lips as he muttered the words. Sorry. And no, Sabo sighed heavily as his hands reached for his temple, rubbing it. Please minimize your voice. We can't allow screw-ups. Not now that we're rescuing your brother. Our brother, Luffy corrected yet again, more adamant this time. I'm making your job harder. I will try not to from now on. Thank you. Sabo gave him an apologetic smile. Inazuma cleared his throat, cutting into their conversation. Hello, my name is Monkey D. Lu. Monkey D. Luffy. I am very much aware. Your reputation precedes you, Inazuma finished. Luffy looked at Sabo in confusion, eyebrows furrowed together. He means that he already knows who you are. You're quite famous for all the wrong reasons. Oh yeah? Luffy giggled. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Inazuma and I shall assist you in your rescue mission. Inazuma offered a handshake. Luffy accepted it. Thanks, I guess. Iva-sama is waiting for us. We shall proceed. We mustn't waste time. They descended the stairs in a hurry. Sabo was never comfortable with small spaces. It didn't offer any kind of escape route. The stairs just went on and on with no end in sight. The only thing heard now was their heavy footsteps. The place was as silent and barren as it could be. Suddenly, he started feeling hot as sweat formed and trailed on his face. He wiped it down as he started breathing heavily. Are we passing level 3? Sabo asked after a while. Yes, please expect that it's about to be worse than that once we're in level 4. Inazuma didn't even flinch as he relayed those words. How far are we? Luffy inquired in a lethargic tone. His tongue was out as he breathed heavily. Sabo, water. Sabo grabbed a bottle from his knapsack and threw it at him. Luffy emptied it in just one gulp. We're halfway through, Inazuma announced. And please don't pay attention to the screaming. Most prisoners are regularly tortured in level. The guards tend to throw them into a boiling pot of blood, he explained, too. Cheerful for Sabo's liking. Sounds fun, Sabo said, sarcasm-inducing. Just like the information laid earlier, it only became hotter as they descended further. Inazuma wasn't bothered by it, not one bit. Luffy, on the other hand, wasn't his usual self and looked helpless. He kept mumbling incomprehensible things. Sabo persevered though the heat was also doing him numbers. The atmosphere changed all at once and shivers ran through their body. Sea cold. Luffy reacted as he rubbed his arms. It's 2 times colder if we were inside, Inazuma stated. Level 5 is so cold the prisoners either die from hyperthermia or severe frostbite. How do you guys even survive this place? Sabo whispered. Life finds a way, Inazuma said, smiling. After a few minutes, the stairs ended. Inazuma opened the door, revealing a bigger room. It revealed the paradise within hell, the Nukama land. The main room consisted of some sort of a cafe and a nightclub. In the middle was a stage with colorful disco lights. There were different kinds of okama and people all merrily having fun. And as they stepped inside, all eyes were on them. Welcome! Ivankov exulted, pumping his right fist in the air. He appeared on the stage out of nowhere dramatically as all lights were pointed at him. Everyone cheered except for the 2 of them who only watched with interested eyes. It's been a while, Sabo-kun. Hey, Sabo waved his hand, smirking. Your love for theatricals knows no bounds, Iva-san. It's one thing Vi will never lose in life, VMY boy, Ivankov chuckled gracefully. Who would have thought the cheeky brat will one day be the one leading us to Vor liberation? Sabo, his afro is so big. Luffy was in awe as he pointed at it. Luffy, it is incredibly rude to point out someone you just met. Sabo reminded him, sighing. He knew that there was no point in it as it would just fall on deaf ears, but he still tried. No manners at all? Ivankov huffed as he crossed his arms. None. I'm a pirate after all, Luffy cheekily grinned, making Ivankov tee-hee again. Vi am Emporio Ivankov, a commander of the Revolutionary Army. I'm Luffy and I will be the king of the pirates one day. Another cheeky brat, I see. Ivankov huffed. He is Dragon's son, Sabo said out of nowhere. Ah yes, of course, he is Dragon's son, Ivankov repeated. There was silence for a few seconds as he blinked his eyes. He looked at Luffy, then at Sabo, then back at Luffy again. He's what? Ivankov shrieked as his whole body flew back to the wall, hitting his head hard. Everyone else was taken aback and copied their queen's expression. The chatter only grew louder as they tried to comprehend what they just heard. My, what an interesting turn of events, Inazuma commented. And Sabo and Ace are my brothers. Luffy chirped, adding more confusion to the mix. What? Ivankov turned and stared at Sabo, eyebrows raised. Surely Vi are not Dragon's scion. Nope. Sabo shrugged. Have Vio got Vir memories back? No, I haven't. Sabo bit down his lips. Kuma sent Luffy to the base after his encounter with a celestial dragon to protect him. Yes, VWE have read it in the newspaper, Ivankov said. Though infiltrating Impel Down together is hardly protecting him, Sabo boy. Luffy recognized who I was and claims that we're sworn brothers and the rest is history. Did you know that Dragon is from the same home island as I was? Vi have my suspicions that he's from East Blue. He's never the one to open up about his past. Can we go now? Luffy asked impatiently. The Vivre card was in his palms as it flew freely and was pointing downwards. Is everything in order? Sabo inquired. His stoic expression returned as chit-chat was now over. Yes, we can move anytime, Inazuma answered. Perfect, Sabo grinned as he put his hands on his hips. We are going to prove that Impel Down is not the impenetrable prison they thought it is. Besides him, Luffy roared with laughter. It sounded like music to Sabo's ears. At that moment, it felt like they could do this. Thanks to Koala and her team, they finally have control over the surveillance system. Sabo called her for updates and no one was suspicious that the revolutionaries were already inside. With Ivankov and Inazuma in tow, they directed Sabo and Luffy to level. Unfortunately, the Nukuma land has no access straight to level. They were forced to traverse the frozen wasteland on their own. Sabo could feel most of the prisoner's life was being weakened by the cold. He was used to dead bodies by now, which was a terrifying idea on its own. Inazuma knew the fastest way to the staircase that will lead them downstairs after scouting the area over the past few days. The surveillance cameras never worked here as the cold easily froze them. The only things they were wary about were the wolves roaming freely. They could be mauled by the wolves, but Sabo could easily tell if there was one nearby, thus avoiding the issue altogether. They soon found the staircase leading to the last level of the prison. It was easy and it gave Sabo all the wrong feelings. He was used to his plans failing, but everything was still going fine. This isn't a trap, is it? Sabo questioned, turning to Ivankov as they ran downstairs. No, Vieri too tense, Sabo boy. Ivankov scoffed. Then why aren't there any guards? Sabo questioned. You've seen those prisoners freeze to their deaths. The guards usually avoid level 5 and level 6 unless it's absolutely necessary. Level 5 for the cold and level 6 for its dangerous residents. Inazuma explained and Sabo just nodded. They reached level 6, Eternal Hell. The ambience already gave the deathly aura Sabo was expecting. It was dark as fog covered most of the area. It was eerily petrifying as the only sound was silence. It didn't have the same torturous screams as the upper levels had. It sent shivers down Sabo's spine, and once again, he was reminded that this place is the most dangerous spot in the whole world. They walked slowly, getting used to the absence of light. Sabo could feel every prisoner's eyes were on them, but he paid them no heed. The cell he was in was only a few meters away from the stairs. There, Sabo first faced Fire Fist Ace. The pirate looked ghastly as expected. His pale body was grotesque, cuts and scrapes scattered all over, red and still fresh on his skin. His hands were stretched out with HNDCFFS on. Ace! Luffy screamed as loudly as he could. Happiness was tingling in his tone. I found you. Luffy? Ace croaked, gray eyes have gone wide and transfixed at him in horror. His lips parted in silent horror as his muscles tensed. What are you doing here, you idiot? Rescuing you, duh, Luffy replied matter-of-factly. With his fist, Sabo destroyed the barred cell and created an opening. He watched as Luffy immediately launched his rubbery arms onto Ace, embracing him. Ace yelped, flinching from the sudden touch. Luffy let go and apologized to him with a frown. The key to the lock was in Luffy's hands and he freed his brother from the clutch. Sorry. I'm just really excited to see you. You promised that you will never die, then I read that you're about to be executed. And your Vivre card is burning away. Stupid Ace who never ran away from a fight. And you're the one who's always saying that I'm reckless. Luffy rambled with a pout. I didn't ask you to come here. People normally break out of prison, not break in. Of all the reckless things you've done, this is definitely the stupidest. Ace rebutted back in annoyance as his ears bled from Luffy's yelling. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Yup. I thought we already established that. Luffy snickered, just happy overall. Sabo just silently listened to their scoldings. He didn't expect them to be this wild and loud, but he didn't stop them. Luffy deserved this after days of anxiety over his older brother's safety. Instead, Sabo redirected his attention to the other prisoner. Jinbei, right? I've heard that you're thrown in here for supporting Whitebeard, Sabo said. Jinbei nodded, although wary of him. Who sent you for Ace? I've been tagged along by his brother. Sabo destroyed the fishman's HNDCFFS, freeing him. I've heard about you from Hack. Hack? Then that means you're from the revolutionaries, Jinbei concluded, standing up. Ace finally took notice of Luffy's companions. Sabo and Ace stared at each other, taking in each other's appearance. Just like Sabo had expected, there was nothing that triggered his past memories. For him, Ace was just like any pirate. Portgasdeath Ace, also known as Fire Fist, the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, has a bounty of 550 million berries, and the current user of Mera Mera no Mi, Sabo said gracefully as his hazel eyes stared at Ace's gray ones. Congratulations, you are being rescued. Please do not resist. Who are you? Ace hissed with a threatening tone. He glared, but Sabo kept his cool. Ace, that's Sabo. The one we exchanged sake with when we're, Luffy replied. Of course, I know who Sabo is. Ace growled. Oh, I thought you forgot your memories, too. What? Ace questioned. He glared at Sabo once again, angrier this time. You didn't answer my question. I am Sabo. No, you're not, Ace growled, spitting the next words like poison. My brother is dead. Sabo flinched. He didn't expect that kind of antagonistic attitude from him. Granted, not everyone was like Luffy. Sabo's hazel eyes were wide as he took it all in. Realization struck him hard and it left a cold mark inside. He never thought about the people he left behind. What their reaction was like and how they dealt with it. They thought he died from that explosion. It took them 10 years to know what really happened to him. And during those years, they mourned for him. They cared for him enough to weep. Sabo wanted to remember. He really does. It was obvious to him now that Luffy and Ace were his family. But Sabo was not there. He didn't know. He didn't remember. He is different now. He's not the brother they mourned 10 years ago. He didn't grow up beside them. He missed so many things. He doesn't know them. He doesn't remember them. And yet, even though Sabo doesn't remember who Ace and Luffy are, they stare at him as if he is their whole world. It hurts. Panic rose up and he found it hard to breathe. He closed his eyes, trying to calm himself from the onslaught of mental anguish. He couldn't falter now, not until he made sure Luffy was safe and out of this place. 10 years ago, on Dawn Island in East Blue, VMY boss rescued a boy from the wreck of a small fishing vessel. VWE treated his injuries and after a few days, he woke up with no memories. Ivankov's voice resonated. You're revolutionaries, Ace mouthed. Then by boss, you mean dragon. Amnesia? Jinbei asked, crossing his arms. Yes. Sabo mumbled. His head was bowed down, unable to look at any of them. Ace stared at him, more sympathetic this time. He wanted to say something but no words came out. Luffy was still clinging to Ace as if he was going to disappear any time. They both watched as Sabo approached them. Sabo put his knees down and removed his coat. He put it on Ace. Sabo. Ace croaked, voice breaking. We all have questions and I promised I will answer them once we are out of this hellhole. Sabo smiled gently. Sabo helped him stand up on his feet. The three nodded at each other. They put their minds foremost into escaping. Sabo, change of plans, Inazuma said. There's currently a jailbreak happening in levels 1 and 2. What? But we haven't directed for that to happen yet. Sabo frowned. Their plan was to cause commotion in the first level to help distract the guards, but it was too early for that. No, it's not from one of our men. From what I'm hearing, it's caused by a man called Buggy the Clown. Well, we must make the best out of it, Sabo said. They ran upstairs back to level. They met up with the Okamas and they were all ready to cause havoc and leave this place behind permanently. They used the entrance to the hidden passageway in the Nukama land. Sabo kept glancing at Ace once in a while, but he's doing very well for his physique. They probably know that Ace had been gone by that time. They just need to conceal themselves deep within the walls. They emerged through level. Everything was messy. Hundreds of prisoners all dressed in black and white clothing were rallying to get on the open door. Guards and different kinds of beasts were there to stop them. It was full-blown chaos, a great distraction for them to slip through the security. Sabo! He turned and saw Koala running towards him. She was with the remaining revolutionaries. Still in one piece, I see. Koala, I would appreciate the sentiment once we're out here, Sabo retorted. I've reached Karasu and the escape ship is awaiting our arrival. We leave as soon as we boarded it, Koala reported. Let's try to Jinbei. She was distracted, running over to the fishman to exchange pleasantries. Straw Hat. Another voice was heard. The man approached their group alongside other prisoners. Buggy? Luffy deadpanned. Uninterested. Oh, it's you, Ace blinked. What kind of response is that? Buggy yelled angrily. I expected a more flashy reaction. You two know him? Sabo asked. He tried killing me one time. Luffy replied enthusiastically. We're drinking buddies, Ace answered. Good job on letting out these PRI. In an instant, the prisoners on their backs screamed for their lives as they were paralyzed. The ragtag group looked back, watching as their bodies melted away in the most painful way possible. The poison consumed their bodies slowly, melting away. And there stood Magellan, the warden of Impel Down. His whole body was covered in his own poison, making him literally untouchable. He looked ready to murder them all. And if his research was correct, he could pretty much do it with one attack. He heard Ace cursing their luck. They were a few meters away from their freedom. Everyone, be careful, and in no instance, you should ever touch him. Ivankov reminded as he readied for the impending fight. We won't be able to escape this place until we defeat the boss itself. Jinbei put on a karate stance. Escape? That's a bold statement to make, first son of the sea, Magellan scoffed as his hands started producing poison. I already blocked the entrance of this place with a wall of poison. Your lives will end here and now. Magellan was quick on offense. He threw the poison at them like ball at such a high speed at every possible angle. The hallway was too small for them to move. It was Inazuma who moved first. He cut the floors and threw them at the incoming attacks. The stone melted instantly. Sabo's mind was still thinking of strategies. They couldn't possibly defeat Magellan without touching him. Hockey could work, but it still wasn't enough to obliterate the man completely. His pipe was the only thing he could use. Just as his brain was still coming up with tactics, Ace and Luffy launched their own attacks. Luffy! Get back here! Sabo yelled, but Luffy paid him no heed. Portgastit Ace, I won't allow you to leave this place alive. Magellan threatened. Oh hell nah. Ace scoffed, jumping in for his attack. Fire burst out from Ace's whole body. It spread out, hitting Magellan's body, but the warden didn't even back down one bit. Ace grabbed Luffy before he could attack the warden, knowing that he didn't stand a chance against him without Haki. Jinbei was next as he punched the air, sending shockwaves and causing Magellan to lose his balance for a second. Sabo soon followed suit as he coated his pipe with armament, hitting the warden straight on his face. Magellan's poison was turned into numerous hydra. Unlike earlier, this poison followed their movements. They ran for it and Sabo managed to dodge as the hydra hit one of the walls. And when his eyes fell on Luffy, emotions were high. Luffy didn't manage to dodge. His lower body, particularly his left leg, was now oozing with poison. He groaned as his leg was now paralyzed, preventing him from moving away from the place. Luffy! Ace and Sabo yelled at the same time. Magellan took notice of Luffy's vulnerability. His hydra was turned into one, much bigger this time. It turned darker in color and it only meant deadlier. The hydra was fast approaching the pirate and Luffy could only watch with wide frozen eyes. Inazuma tried the same tactic again of blocking the hydra with stone, but it failed. The poison was far stronger this time, abolishing the stone in mere seconds. Ace finally got Luffy, but there wasn't enough time to drag themselves out of that mess. Sabo's eyes were full of fear, thinking it was happening again. He's about to lose his bro. I'm Sabo and you are? Ace. Let's be partners in crime. Being a pirate sounds fun. My name's Luffy and I want to be friends. Alone is much more painful than getting hurt. Do you want me to live? They only love their status, not me. Let's become stronger and be pirates. It's the proof of my existence. I want to be the. If you exchange cups of sake with someone, you're gonna be. From now on, we are. Your grandpa's really crazy. Let's stand up on our own feet. I want a telescope. I'll do what you ask. Please just don't hurt them. Are you going to end it like this? I'm ashamed of being born noble. If I stay behind here, I will never be free. Please take care of him for me. His head throbbed painfully as the ringing in his ears won't stop. Information was being inserted into his brain faster than he could comprehend. He felt like being drowned by the thousands of images flashing in his mind. It was becoming hard to breathe. He had to clutch his knees to maintain his balance. And then it all came back to him. Don't you dare touch my brothers! Sabo yelled in fury. He ran, standing in front of them as he took the incoming poisonous hydra. The last thing he remembered was screaming as his whole body felt like it was melting away. It's all right, father. I understand, Sabo breathed out as he tried to calm the situation. No. Don't do it, Sabo. Ace screamed with all his might, still struggling to break free from his captor's grasp but to no avail. His body was small and he couldn't overpower an adult. Ace never felt so powerless before. Sabo was a few meters away from him and yet he couldn't find a way to escape. This was their worst-case scenario as they never expected that Sabo's father would take him away. It was Blue Jam of all people he could have hired to do the deed. And now, Ace and Luffy were pinned to the ground, helpless. Sabo was trying to negotiate but even his efforts were futile. Ace knew Sabo well enough. He grew up in a complicated family where his parents loved their wealth more than their own son. Sabo treasured Ace and Luffy because, for the first time in his life, he was shown what love truly is. I'll do what you ask me. Sabo continued, forcing himself to say the next words. Just don't hurt these two. That's all I ask. Please, they are my irreplaceable brothers. Sabo. Luffy whimpered as realization struck him hard. Then you should go home now and stop playing pirate, his good-for-nothing of a father ordered. A smug smile plastered on his lips, looking victorious. Ace would enjoy beating that scumbag within an inch of his life. How dare he force Sabo into doing something he clearly did not want. He was treating Sabo like a puppet that he can control at any time. He knew that Ace and Luffy could be leveraged, used as a hostage for Sabo to obey. Ace's gray eyes went wide as he watched Sabo turn his back. Escorted by 2 guards, their brother started walking away. It was as if he was in a nightmare but it wasn't. This was the reality. He was watching one of his brothers leave. Freedom. That's the dream the 3 of them shared. Sabo just wanted to live his life on his own accord, not the jewelry nor money the status of a noble offered. Ace understood how Sabo hated his own heritage. Hightown was a place that only brought sorrow to him. Sabo was disgusted by the place and the people it bred. And Sabo was willing to undergo all that suffering just to save his brothers, Ace and Luffy. Sabo, don't go. Luffy begged as he clenched his fists in desperation. Just run. Don't worry about us. You want to live freely, remember? Are you going to end it like this? Ace begged, desperation crawling in. Sabo didn't have to do that just for them. They always find a solution for things. This situation was no different. Sabo! Ace and Luffy screamed simultaneously. But their brother never turned his back as he walked away. Ace could only watch as Sabo once again sacrificed himself to protect them. It all happened too quickly for him to comprehend. Time seemed to have stopped for him at that exact moment. He cannot focus on anything else. The ringing in his ears won't stop, blocking the different voices in his surroundings. He couldn't fathom any of them. The image in front of him will forever be etched in his mind. Everything else was blurry and he could only focus on Sabo's body falling. He moved as fast as he could, dropping Luffy behind and grabbing Sabo before he could hit the stone floor. Ace was sure he was yelling, more because of what Sabo had done and less about the poison getting in contact with his skin. Sabo's screams were torturous. At first, they were only whimpers until they became louder and were full-blown excruciating howling. He was suffering as the poison was slowly burning through his flesh. His limbs were shaking, flailing everywhere. In a second, he was in a state of catatonic stupor, motionless and unable to talk nor scream, completely paralyzing and shutting down his whole body. Sabo! Luffy's heartbreaking whimpers resonated. Finally, Ace became aware of his surroundings. They were at Impel Down staging a jailbreak. Prisoners were panicking because Magellan has appeared to murder them all. Luffy was caught in his poison and Ace was about to move Luffy away but Sabo was. You're already dead. Magellan let out his poison hydras again, not giving them time to recover. But Ace didn't move. His body became impossibly still on the spot. His eyes were in wide circles as he took notice of Jinbei and Ivankov teaming up to stop Magellan's incoming poison. Those two had attacks based on shockwaves and they dispersed the poison into thin air. Ace, this is no time for you to be frozen. Jinbei directed, panting loudly. The orange-haired girl from earlier ran beside Ace. She was yelling Sabo's name as tears ran down her cheeks, begging him to live. Ace was too wallowed in shock to care, still focusing on his brother. Sabo's face said it all, conscious through his suffering. Sabo could feel the pain of the poison creeping in and melting him away. The blood rushed into Ace's head again. The rage he felt blinded everything. It clouded his judgment, only focused on his wrath and how to unleash it with all his might. All that was in his head was to hurt the BSTRD who dared to attack his two brothers. He would make sure to get his revenge in the best way possible. He used to hide this side of himself back then, but if it was to be used for his brothers, he would gladly give in. Ace was called a demon all his life. He was confined in the lowest level of hell, and he will absolutely prove why. Fire erupted from his skin, burning away the poison. He was not at his full potential after being in Seastone for so long. But he could still fight for their sake. His deadly eyes were locked on his prey, wheeling around him with a heated glare. His teeth were grinding as his jaw clenched. Jinbei and Ivankov were still teaming up to fight Magellan, doing their best in distracting the warden and avoiding his poison. Ace's fire grew larger as he launched himself in. His screams were thundering with bitter resentment. Fire Fist. He let out his signature move with all his fury concentrated in one attack. Magellan didn't see it coming and took it head on. The poison on his body burned away, causing toxic fumes to be unleashed on the air, deadly if one was to inhale it in their lungs. Ace stumbled back, legs jittery. His breathing was quick and hollow. He felt like his body was starting to shut down after days of fatigue finally catching up to him. There are still so many things he wanted to do with Magellan, but his body won't allow it. He snarled, cursing his fate to be in such a situation. It was hard to breathe as his hands clutched his chest. Magellan was not a Logia user after all. Once the thick layers of toxin seemingly evaporated, Jinbei struck him with haki, hitting Magellan in his exposed skin. Magellan stumbled a bit, clearly taking damage after that. "I've had enough of this," Magellan roared, angrier than ever. He instantly recovered and stood his ground, composing himself. He started chewing his poison and blowing it like bubblegum. It burst, creating yet another poison gas in the vicinity. It stopped everyone from advancing. The poisonous hydra was coming Ace's way again. Ace had a hard time standing up. He could walk slowly, not having enough energy to fight back or avoid what was coming. He cursed himself in his mind. He didn't want to die like this. But if this was his fate, he was full of regrets. "Ace." He heard Luffy's voice, yearning to be heard. It added another burden in Ace's heart hearing his brother's desperation. "Stop it. That's enough." Ace could feel every bit of Luffy's willpower unleashing. His haki was raw and was still in its early stage. With that, the weaker-willed people surrounding his younger brother lost consciousness one by one. Mass hysteria engulfed the crowd, confusion instilling. "Luffy, you have it, too," Ace croaked, staring at him with widened eyes. It surprised him but was not a total shock since he knew there was something special about his younger brother. "You DMN brat," Magellan growled. His shock was given away by a brief gasp. "How come someone like you has?" In a blink of an eye, bright azure flames had stopped Magellan midway. "The Phoenix has arrived, burning ever so brightly. Its wings spread to bring light and burn the poison the warden has caused." Its claw was clutching Magellan's arms, making it bleed harshly. "Jinbei, get Ace out of here now, you are. We end this war once he's aboard Moby D-." Marco ordered harshly with a tone with no arguments. Ace choked back a sob. He finally heard his voice after months of being homesick. Marco was here and it only meant his family as a whole. There was relief in the back of his mind but it was overpowered by self-condemnation. "WR?" Ace gasped in realization as he stood on his feet. Marco's flame burst, spreading everywhere and causing everyone to be caught in it. Ace was hit by the familiar warmth, easing him from the tension he was experiencing in the past few weeks. Marco's fire was all he needed to be at ease even if it was temporary. Ace's flame was for annihilation, the kind that burned to destroy everything in its path. But Marco's flame was for healing, the kind that felt at home and lit the hearth. Hot. "Get it off me, it's not?" He heard Luffy reacting as he ran next to his brothers. The poison on Luffy's lower body had perished. His eyebrows were furrowed, wondering why the fire didn't burn him. Ace kneeled next to the revolutionaries tending off Sabo. The blue flame burned the poison off Sabo's body but it still wasn't enough. His skin was turning pale. His lips were the deathly color of white and purplish on some parts. "Ace." Jinbei grabbed his arms painfully. "We gotta go. Now." Ace looked up at Jinbei's eyes, shaking his head. He bit down his lips, choking back a sob. He wanted to hide the pain within but it was too late. Tears were already out, streaming freely down his cheeks. His eyes were lonely and helpless, looking for any kind of consolation. "I'm sorry. Sabo." Ace apologized, voice breaking as he bawled. "It should have been me." Layers and layers of guilt and self-hatred were starting to catch up. The frustration had built up and he felt like exploding. He wanted to scream and wail, letting out his pain. Everything was his fault. This whole mess was caused by him, and yet his brothers were paying the price. Sabo was on the verge of death, all because of Ace's pride, impulsivity, and recklessness. In the past, there was nothing more he wished than to have Sabo back. They never said their goodbyes to each other. Now, they had the chance to be with him again, but he ruined everything. They just learned Sabo was alive after all these years. He cannot leave them now. There were so many lingering questions in his mind. So many stories they can tell each other. So many things they can still do. It was unfair how he was the one suffering for his crimes. Vi have administered a special herm in his bloodstream. It will STMLT his immune system, Ivankov said, carrying Sabo on his back. Sabo's gonna be okay, right? Luffy asked, frightened about his brother's condition. Jinbei put him on his back as he was still limping. His survival all depends on his will to live. And knowing him, it's highly likely. Ivankov answered truthfully. Ace, don't falter now. Save the tears for later, Jinbei reminded him. Ace sniffed, wiping away the snot and tears using his hands. Regrets would be saved for later. Now, he focused on getting out of this place alive. The sooner his brothers could get out of this hellhole, the better they could find a doctor to give them proper treatment. They ran for it together with the remaining revolutionaries and prisoners who survived Magellan. Ace took a glance at Marco, who didn't let Magellan have a chance to attack their escaping group. Ace knew how strong Marco was, and fighting the warden would be a breeze for him. Once Ace stepped out and saw the sunlight for the first time in weeks, it was a different story. The sky was a colorful shade of blue, not a single cloud to be seen, granted there was thick gray smoke blocking it. The sound of cannons firing and bullet shots was heard as both forces were doing their best to overpower the battle. He was perspiring, sweat dripping down from his gored face. He tasted blood, probably from biting his lower lips from anxiety. All around them was disorder and chaos, a vicious picturesque of war. The pain of his wounds didn't register, being drowned by the cries and screams of men. His family was in the midst of a sea battle against the Marines. The Whitebeard pirates had easily breached the naval forces of Impel Down. A surprise attack for sure, and the Marine station barely had the time for a backup. Marineford was only 30 minutes away from here. Judging the damages done, the battle was only for a few minutes. Ace could see Moby D on the horizon, surrounded by its sister ships. He took a quick glance at his surroundings to assess the situation. Most Marine ships had already been obliterated as debris floating aimlessly in the sea. Truly a one-sided battle, as no one had anticipated that their father would choose to rescue him and Impel Down. Anyone knows a way to get on a ship? Ivankov questioned as he caught his breath. On it, Jinbei replied. He whistled loudly. A few seconds later, numerous giant whale sharks emerged on the surface. Hop in. Amazing. He heard Luffy whispering, half-conscious. Ace looked at him, hoping that he'd sleep through this whole ordeal. Jinbei continued communicating with the sharks. One whale shark approached their group. It stopped in front of them. Jinbei was the first to jump on its back. He assisted Ace as he rode it in. Ace looked at their group, who were lacking in numbers when they first started. The whale shark let out a wail before it started moving toward the main battle. Ace had to wipe his face after seawater was thrown all over him. It stung his open wounds, groaning as the pain wouldn't cease. Nauseousness emerged, feeling sick all of a sudden. There were numerous cannons in their path, but the shark did a great job avoiding most of them. Some were up to Jinbei to deflect. The fishman was back at his domain, which was the sea, and was basically unstoppable now. Out of the corner of his eyes, there was one lone marine warship that was raising a white flag. It contained the prisoners who managed to escape, being commanded by Buggy. Ace didn't see the clown when they were fighting the warden. Probably because he was the first one to run for his freedom and leave them to deal with such a monster. And from the other marine ships, there were his siblings fighting and overthrowing the Marines on board. Once they were close to Moby D-, the whale shark jumped out of the water. Ace tightened his hold, not wanting to fall and die of drowning. Using its tail, the whale shark hit them, causing them to fly. Midair, Ace looked back at Impel Down. He got some sort of relief seeing it from afar. It only meant that he was free from its hellish chains. They landed at the deck of Moby D, with a thud. Ace lost his footing, landing face first. He groaned before opening his eyes. He looked particularly for his brothers. Jinbei let Luffy down, helping him to stand up. Ivankov was still holding Sabo, who was looking worse. "Welcome home, my son." Ace choked back a sob. While he was imprisoned, he dreamt of him many times, giving him the comfort he needed during those dark times. His whole body was trembling as he stood up on his feet. Gray eyes searching for the man who saved him physically and mentally many times now. He stood together with his other brothers, waiting for his arrival. Edward Newgate, most commonly called Whitebeard. The strongest man in the world. The man closest to One Piece. He had many names and titles he gained throughout the years. But for Ace, he was simply his father. The father that accepted him into their family wholeheartedly. The father that dealt with him with patience. The father that accepted him even though his biological one was his arch-nemesis. Ace stared at his father, teary-eyed. He swallowed the lump in his throat. Shame was present and he wanted to hide away. He couldn't face them, not after what he had done. But Whitebeard's eyes were full of love as if he understood everything Ace had gone through while he was gone for 3 months. An affectionate smile was on his lips, reassuring him that everything would be all right now. That smile was like the sunshine, lighting up the darkest corners of his heart. Oyaji, I'm so. There is nothing you should apologize for. We are happy you are back. But. Ace had bitten down his lips before horror struck him hard. His eyes widened as he peered back. Oyaji, please save my brothers. They've been poisoned. You're Ace's captain, right? Luffy's chuckle resonated, but unlike his usual laugh, this time it was a remorseful one. He sat down on his knees, bowing his head with no sign of hesitation. His straw hat fell from his head. Please, I'm begging you. Save my brothers. I've just got them back and I don't want to lose them. Luffy. For the second time that day, Ace was surprised by Luffy's actions. Of course, I will. Have a little faith in me, brat, he guffawed, intrigued by the young pirate. I am Whitebeard. His father signaled the nurses on standby. They swarmed their group, particularly Sabo and Ace, who were clearly the most damaged out of the bunch. He tried to push them out of the way, stubborn that he didn't need medical assistance. All that mattered to him was his brothers getting it for themselves. With that, Ace collapsed in exhaustion. Adrenaline was gone and days of fatigue finally caught up to him. Consciousness found its way, and he awakened from his slumber. Ace fluttered his eyes open, still having blurry vision. He blinked rapidly till his vision cleared. The bright fluorescent light was blinding him and it only added more strain to his eyes. He put his hands over his face, hiding. He smelled the familiar scent of antiseptic and lemon disinfectant he so disliked. It was silent, saved only by his heavy breathing and beeps of the machine that indicated he was alive. He raised his right arm with random tubes inserted deep within his skin. He always hated the infirmary. It felt like solitary confinement with nothing to do than to stare at the room for hours. He felt trapped while the nurses kept on ordering him around. He had been here more times than he could ever count. Particularly back when he kept on challenging Oyaji for a fight. Good, you're awake now, you are. Ace turned his gaze towards his right side. Marco's face was neutral. He was sitting on a stool, legs crossed. In his hands were a notebook and a pen. Sorry. He mumbled, eyes darting sideways, ashamed of his actions. Marco heaved a heavy sigh. When will you stop apologizing, Ace? But Ace jolted himself up, exerting his worn-out body. He groaned as his muscles tensed up from the sudden movement. Rest, Marco proffered softly. Your body needs time to recover. Where are they? Ace questioned in a whisper. The memories of that time in Impel Down started resurfacing in his head. Where are they? He repeated with a scream. The beeping of the monitors became louder as his heart rate became faster than normal. He was breathless as if he was being choked. His body was shaking to the core. His heart pounded heavily, making him clutch his chest. It felt like his heart could burst out of his ribcage. Whimpers were the only sound he could make. Cold sweat lingered on his skin, feeling weak overall. It's okay. I'm here for you, all right? Marco's reassuring voice reached his ears. His hands rubbed Ace's back gently. Breathe in, he instructed, and Ace obliged though shakily. He held it for 5 seconds. And out. Ace did so for a few minutes. He chewed his lower lip, tasting blood. Marco was there to hold him still, supporting him through his panic attack. Ace let himself mellow in his touch, body giving in. After months of no physical contact, this was what he needed. He sniffed in his familiar scent of warm, intense spice bombs that felt like a blanket draped over his skin. Marco was using his flames to soothe his wounds and Ace eased up. Being stuck in a dark, cold cell for so long made this moment even more cherished than he could ever ask for. His eyes darted around the room till they finally landed on the brothers he had been searching for. Luffy was sleeping, snoring lightly. He was sitting on a stool, head bowed down on the side of the bed. From afar, he looked so innocent. There were bandages plastered on him, hiding the wounds that seemed to have started to heal. His straw hat remained on his nape, damaged like him but still reparable. There in the bed was Sabo. There were far more machines and tubes on his side. And for a moment, the thought that he might be dead did cross Ace's mind. A breathing apparatus was on his face, chest heaving as he gasped for oxygen. He looked ghastly pale, almost bluish. Even his lips had lost their color. His eyes had sunken, dark around the bags. The left side of his face was bandaged up. I did that to him. Magellan did that to him, Marco corrected. But he wouldn't sneak in inside Impel Down if it wasn't for me. Wouldn't you do the same if the situation were reversed, Yua? That's not the point and you know it. Ace gritted his teeth. Ace, I know you like blaming yourself for everything but you can't control your brother's decisions. Tell me the truth. Ace stared at him, straight in the eye. What's his status? His body was basically fried from the inside. His past scars have reopened, particularly his left side, and it took the most damage. His left eye might need time to readjust again, or it might be blind permanently, only time will tell. There's also cardiac arrest, and it happened twice in the last 5 days. Ace flinched hearing those words. A premonitory chill ran down his spine. Overall, he is going to live, Yua, Marco said before Ace could wallow fully in self-pity. That Okama queen used his devil fruit to boost his adrenaline and norepinephrine. It made his heart beat faster and stop his body from fully shutting down. My flames had also helped minimize the damage and removed any trace of poison in his skin and bloodstream. If those first aids haven't been given to him on time, he's certain to die within 24 hours. Next time, please just get straight to the point of saying that he's in no mortal danger, Ace scowled. He removed the 4 prickling his skin, hating how it felt. Seriously, Ace. How thick is your skull, Yua? Marco complained, though not stopping him. He was used to him being stubborn. His feet reached the floor, standing up slowly and jittery. Just when he's about to start walking, he lost his balance. Marco was there to help him, draping Ace's arm around his neck. They walked slowly as Ace limped. Marco pulled a stool from the corner, putting it next to the sleeping Luffy. Ace sat down with a groan. His arms reached for Luffy, touching and patting his raven hair. It's only been 2 months since they last saw each other, but his younger brother looked like he aged ever since, looking more mature. He has the least damage out of you 3. Though, his appetite might suggest otherwise, Marco sighed, removing his glasses and then rubbing his temples. I know you've told us that he's a glutton, but nothing could have ever prepared our chefs for that, Yua. I'm certain you haven't heard of your brother's escapades in the past month, Marco said. He basically declared war with the world government, got the devil child Nico Robin to join his crew, punched a celestial dragon in his face, and got in and out of Impel Down and lived to tell the tale. Yeah, that sounds like him. Marco's mouth hung open. Nothing ever surprises you when it comes to him, huh? He's Luffy. You'll get used to him over time. Next thing you'll know, he will raid Marineford. I can see why the 3 of you are brothers. You all lack self-preservation. Marco replied sardonically. Ace? Luffy said groggily, wiping his eyes. He blinked rapidly before flashing a toothy grin. Good. You're awake now. Idiot. Don't yell. Sabo needs to rest. Mimi, Ace. You're the one who's yelling. The 2 of you shut up, Marco threatened, crossing his arms. Sorry, pineapple. Pineapple? Ace repeated. It's supposed to be burning chicken, but he looked more like a pineapple. If he's not your brother, I would have already thrown him overboard, Yua. Marco deadpanned, exasperated. So where's Koala? She said she's gonna bring me meat once I wake up, Luffy questioned, eyes searching the room. Who's that? Ace asked. A revolutionary who's also acting as Luffy's babysitter, Marco replied. They're still here? How did we even get involved with them in the first place? It was Dragon who reached out first. He said his men had already infiltrated Impel Down to break you out, Yua. We got into a temporary alliance and now we have their chief of staff, 2 commanders, and a few officers on board. We're treating them with hospitality as a token of gratitude. Seriously, Sabo? Ace croaked, staring at his brother's face. Out of all people, revolutionaries. The most enigmatic organization in the world. Luffy chuckled lightly. Who would have thought he'd end up with my dad? Yeah. Ace nodded. Blinking, he looked back at his brother with wide eyes. What, Yua? Marco raised an eyebrow. Did he just reveal that his father is the most wanted man in the world? Ace sighed, scratching the back of his head. If you can keep my biological father a secret, I'm sure you can do Luffy's, too. Right, Marco? Sure, whatever. Marco didn't look amused, not one bit. Remain here for the meantime. I still want to observe your injuries. I'm also going to inform everyone that you're awake. They watched him leave before peering their eyes at their unconscious brother. Luffy, I want you to tell me everything, Ace said seriously. How did you find each other? Luffy blinked repeatedly, looking as if deep in thought. It all started when we arrived in Sabaody. That place looks really nice and bubbles float in the air. Ace listened carefully, wanting to know everything that he missed in the past months. He's alive. His brothers are alive. That's all that matters to him. If there was one place in Moby D where you can find almost everyone, it was the cafeteria. It was where he could find screaming chefs heard from the tables, letting them know that they could get another serving. The chattering of his siblings, telling about their misadventures, joking, and teasing. The food was also simple but very fulfilling and delicious. Ace loved the place for the food, the people, the stories, and the bond they created and shared. In the first rays of the day, there at the entrance stood Ace together with Luffy. The voices died down as every last one of his siblings turned in their direction. Ace could feel the nervousness creeping in, still ashamed to face them all. His familiar habit of running didn't work, not now that Luffy was holding his hands to keep him in place. Ace took a deep breath. Bowing, he uttered. "I'm so. Wrong thing to say, you are." Marco smacked him in the head, appearing out of nowhere. "Yeah, say something nicer." Luffy encouraged. "Welcome back, Ace." Haruta cheerfully greeted him, standing up and giving him a big thumbs up. "Welcome back," Aizu said in a more reserved manner, before taking a sip of his morning tea. "Welcome back," Vista greeted happily as he stroked his mustache. Ace stared at his siblings with mellower eyes. Welcoming shouts echoed in the cafeteria, each of his siblings happy to see him back. The sea was a very vast place, and despite being away for so long, Ace was happy to find a place he could return to and feel loved. "I'm home," he announced, allowing himself to smile for the first time in weeks. He missed this. He missed his family. Ace didn't allow himself to be away from the infirmary for long. After all, he still had a brother he needed to care for and worry about. Luffy remained in the cafeteria and was the one providing entertainment for everyone. Ace trusted Marco to keep his younger brother in control. He entered the room, unaware that someone was already there. Ace froze, seeing that he was interrupting the moment. It was the girl who was with the revolutionaries. The one named Koala who Luffy talked about. She was holding Sabo's hands and her eyes were solemnly looking at his features. And Ace just witnessed her kissing Sabo on his cheeks. He stepped back, knowing that he wasn't supposed to see that. But he, unfortunately, knocked over a medicine cabinet that made a loud thud, alerting Koala about his presence. She jerked back, blue eyes wide as their gazes meet. I didn't mean to." Ace scrambled in his words, scrambling to pick up the medicine that was thrown on the floor. "No, it's all right," Koala reassured with a small smile. "I don't think we've been formally introduced to each other. My name is Koala and I've been your brother's partner for years now. I'm Ace, but I guess you already know that." He approached Sabo's bed, inspecting him and noticing nothing has changed in his appearance. "Yes, you've been quite the talk of the whole world with that little escapade," she humored. "If you don't mind me asking." Ace scratched his head. "What is he to you?" "I love him." "Oh?" Ace reacted, blinking. A slight blush formed as his eyes averted. "Oh, that's a funny reaction." Koala chuckled lightly. "I love him in a way you won't understand. We're closer than siblings yet less NTMT than lovers. It's complicated, especially since we both chose our careers over us. But I truly care for him and I know he feels the same way." Ace remained silent. He wasn't expecting to hear about his brother's love life that moment, but there he was. But whatever little information he could get to know more about Sabo, Ace would gladly take it. And Koala seemed to be his best bet, considering she probably spent more time with Sabo than Ace did his whole life. What am I saying?" Koala slapped her cheeks, turning red from embarrassment. "Just please don't mention anything to him, okay?" Ace just nodded, not knowing what to reply. "What I'm trying to say is, Sabo is reckless. I believe his kindness comes from his selflessness. He took a bullet for me once and I blamed myself. I know he only wants to protect the people he loves, but that's utterly nonsensical and I'm rambling, aren't I?" "It's okay, I guess that's just your way of venting it out," Ace murmured. "The last time we saw each other. He sacrificed his happiness for us. I guess that's a trait he will never lose. Some things will never change. Luffy has mentioned that before. His father hired pirates to get him back." Koala sighed heavily. Her fingers started fidgeting as she looked over at her partner once more, almost teary-eyed. "Sabo is a selfish idiot who likes hurting himself to protect others. You hear that, Sabo? You're stupid, but please come back. We still need you here. You really care for him, don't you?" Ace asked with a soft smile. "Of course," Koala answered firmly, slightly offended. "Then thank you for taking care of my brother and please continue doing so." Ace said his appreciation, bowing his head. What are you doing?" That's not necessary at all." Koala scrambled, waving her hands in the air. Ace had a feeling that it's gonna be the start of a great friendship. "I have lots of embarrassing stories about him. Wanna trade?" Interesting, Koala blinked, diverting her body to face him. I'm all ears. Go on. And as they retell the memories they share with Sabo, Ace realized that some things never changed. Teach is certainly not bothering us for a few months, Marco said sternly, arms crossed over. All the nerves in Ace's body tense. He clenched his fists in an attempt to hide the fury deep within his soul. He bit down his lips, averting his eyes from Marco's examining eyes. Ace and Luffy had just woken up, still on Sabo's side. It was the first thing Marco had said to them this morning after he read the contents of the newspapers regarding the updates on the jailbreak of the century that happened in Impel Down. He's the one who got you, right? Luffy asked worriedly, but Ace refused to ignore his inquiry. Get to the point, Marco. Ace tapped his feet impatiently. Shortly after we withdrew from Impel Down, Teach with his crew had arrived. Marco started as he got a stool and sat over. With the confusion happening, he easily breached inside. Ace growled, not liking where it was going. He knew how ferocious those people in the lowest people could be. But before he could get to the lowest level, Akainu and Kizaru had intercepted him. Marco continued, crossing his legs over. The Marine admirals were already dispatched after hearing about your breakout, and due to Teach's devil's luck, he's the one they got. Ace blinked. Is he dead? Dead, no. Heavily injured, yes. Marco shook his head in an exasperated manner. It's hard to kill a bad thing. But it would take him a while to lick his wounds. We will deal with him later on. And this time, we will do it together. Am I clear? Ace hesitated before nodding his head. He reached for the newspaper in Marco's hand. Scanning the article, he noticed inconsistencies. But the story here is different from what you said. Ace frowned. Marco threw him a slightly annoyed look. Do you really think the Marines will let the world know about their incompetence? All the things I said came from our sources combined with the revolutionaries. That's Teach? Luffy pointed to the picture in the article. I think I've met him before. You what? Ace yelled, throwing the papers away. He gritted his teeth, glaring at him. Luffy was startled by his actions, gulping in alarm. I guess it's on? Java? Jaya? I never liked him, 'cause he said that those pies are delicious but they're absolutely disgusting. First, I'll go to Water 7 and kill Straw Hat Luffy and hand him over to the world government. Zehahaha. Horror dawned upon him, realizing how much of a close call it had been for Luffy. The younger brother he swore to protect with his life was close to being captured. Teach had almost gotten one of his brothers killed yet again. Marco? Ace gritted his teeth, hating how he forgot about that fact. Teach's target was never me. It's supposed to be Luffy. Marco's eyes widened, but he maintained his sang-froid expression. Explain. He offered me a place on his crew. Telling me about his plan to be a warlord by handing Luffy's head to the Marines. Ace's face was a crumpled mess. He put his elbows on his knees, bowing his head down. He didn't know that we're brothers, and that's why something in me snapped. He already got Thatch. I swore that he's not getting Luffy, too. I don't think he's coming after Luffy again. He's never the one to repeat a mistake, Marco reasoned. I'm gonna be fine. I'm strong now. I can handle myself. Luffy frowned, defending himself. You never once beat me. What makes you think that you're gonna win against a monster like him? Ace's tone was cold and harsh, but it was the only way to get through Luffy's thick skull. Look, Luffy. I acknowledge your strength, but I want you to never, ever engage him in a fight. If you ever encounter him, please just run. Luffy looked like he wanted to argue, but seeing the seriousness in Ace's expression, he silently nodded. Well, that wrapped things up. Marco stood up, stretching his legs. Go and get breakfast, you too. Days went on and Ace's routine remained the same. He always stayed at the infirmary, rarely leaving. He asked Marco to just bring him something to eat, much to the first mate's chagrin. Marco normally doesn't allow others inside, but seeing that Ace's mental health was not at its best, it was better to leave him alone in the meantime. Ace did get visitors frequently, as his siblings tend to worry about his current state. The word that Sabo was a long-lost brother of Ace was making its round across their ship. For the first time in years, Ace and Luffy talked about their childhood days. They retell stories over and over, free from the shadow of death that hanged them. Their brother was alive this whole time. He just needed time to heal, and they will be back again as a trio. Back then, Sabo was an unspoken thing between Ace and Luffy, as it just caused them misery and regret. And after 1 week since the jailbreak, Ace finally saw the familiar face of his former first mate. You look like Sheet, Deuce greeted with a frown. Always the charmer, are we? Ace scoffed, rolling his eyes with an exasperated look. Hi, you're Deuce, right? Ace told me lots about you. Like that one time you got stuck on an island for a whole month. Luffy grinned, eyes wide in excitement. Deuce blinked, bewildered by the sudden burst of energy the young pirate was emanating. It's nice meeting you, Luffy. Ace was right. You really are ecstatic. Shahihi, that I am. Would you mind if I borrow your brother for a bit? Deuce pointed at him and Ace glared. I'm not leave. Nope, but just make sure you feed him. He's not eating the meat I'm giving him. Luffy agreed without hesitation, pouting as he threw his older brother a look. Deuce stared at Ace with eyebrows raised. Not eating, huh? Your body is still in the process of recovering. How do you expect? Deuce, enough. Marco has given me an earful about that, Ace exaggeratedly groaned. He muttered under his breath. Med doctors. Just go out, Ace. I'll be at Sabo's side until you're back. Don't worry, Luffy insisted with a mocking salute. Ace heaved a sigh as he stood up. Deuce nodded and the two traversed the corridors of Moby D. It was early in the evening and most of his siblings were still up with booze in hand. It took the duo a while to go to the deck as Ace was greeted at every turn by their siblings eager to see him again. It was a cloudy night and Ace was disappointed he wouldn't be able to gaze at the stars. The two sat at the forecastle desk where they could be alone. It was their routine even back when they had the piece of spadil. Most nights, the duo would share a drink or two talking about their past lives before they sailed to be pirates. If there's one person who knew him way better than his brothers, it would be Deuce. Trust was an important aspect for the captain and his first mate. Deuce was the first man he met when he first ventured out. They were put into life-threatening situations but they always had each other's back. Even now that they're both whitebeards, their bond still remains the same. So what is this of Kotatsu? Ace exclaimed as the feline appeared out of nowhere. Kotatsu charged over, nuzzling his neck and breathing in his scent. Ace's body hurt but he didn't have the heart to push the feline away. The scene earned a chuckle from Deuce. He misses you. Attaboy, calm down. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere, Ace reassured, and the feline relaxed, sitting next to him, appreciating the warmth Ace was giving. How are you holding up? Deuce asked after they settled down. What's this? A free therapy session? Ace scoffed as he patted Kotatsu's head. Considering the things that happened in the past months, I say it's way overdue, Deuce replied dryly. Ace decided to talk, knowing that Deuce will never let him leave until he does. Oh, I don't know. I spent months away from home, got defeated by the traitor, thrown into impel down and tortured, and learned that my brother whom I thought died 10 years ago is still alive but was poisoned and now on the verge of death because of me. I like to believe that I'm doing okay all things considered. Marco has been transparent about your brother's condition. And from what I've seen earlier, he's on his way to recovery, Deuce explained, wanting to ease his anxiety. It still feels weird, though. Ace mumbled, looking down. As a kid, I've always dreamt about this moment. I'm glad he's back but, what if he hates me? It's the question on the back of his mind. 10 years was a long time and it changed people. Sabo was not the same as before, given the amnesia. But there were still whispers in the back of his mind and it was getting harder to ignore as the days went on. If there's one thing Ace feared the most, it was being hated by the people he loved. He couldn't imagine what Sabo's reaction is going to be once he woke up. Sabo would probably loathe him after what happened. Deuce hit him in the head pretty hard, ending his brooding. What was that? Ace complained, stopping midway. Yeah, I deserved that. Your insecurities are showing again and that's why I've come to talk. I know you hate yourself but your brother's actions are his and his alone. Silence befell between them, only saved by Kotatsu's frequent snores. I know you're not used to people doing things for you. But please allow us to help you. Don't shut us out. Deuce's voice was softer. Ace looked up, staring into his eyes. But all I've ever done is caused people problems. It's called being human. That's how relationships work. We will hurt each other through the actions we take because it's what we thought would be the best for the person. Ace let out a lone chuckle. I can't believe that you're really a therapist now. Is it working? Sort of. Ace plastered a small smile. Thank you, Deuce. Deuce returned the smile. The two enjoyed the silence the night had brought, just content with each other's presence. Sabo's doing fine. He looked like a zombie in the past days but his colors are coming back now. Ace heard Luffy laughing delightedly as he got back into the room. He stepped inside, seeing Luffy holding a den mushi in his hands. His younger brother looked cheerful and whoever it was that was calling him, was making Luffy jolly. Yeah, Hack got here like 3 days ago together with Crowy. Koala's also been taking care of me. She's nicer these days, Luffy continued then his eyes landed on his brother. Oh, Ace is here now. Bye, Dad. Let's just talk again later. See ya. Luffy put down the speaker, putting the den mushi on the table nearby. Ace sat in front of him. He inspected the comatose Sabo first and true enough on Luffy's words earlier, his skin was starting to look livelier. Luffy was just staring at him with an innocent look. So, Dad, huh? Ace asked as their eyes met. Yup, Luffy replied merrily. He's just checking on me and Sabo. Oh, how very nice of him to check on you after all these years, Ace snorted as he crossed his arms over his chest. Luffy made a face, observing his brother's sudden change in character. I like him. Sabo likes him. I can introduce him to you the next time he calls. No, thanks. I have no interest in meeting people who abandon their family. What's it with you? Luffy demanded, more upset this time. Nothing, Ace reprimanded, eyes narrowing. What I'm trying to say is... Luffy patiently waited for him to finish the sentence, but Ace never did. He didn't mean to be hostile about Luffy's relationship with Dragon. But in the end, it got him. Jealousy. Roger and Dragon were the same. Maybe that's the reason why their sons got along so well as brothers. Ace and Luffy were abandoned in a world where everyone viewed their fathers as villains, forced to fend for and fight for themselves. That's why they cling to each other. Their fathers chose their careers over their own flesh and blood. It's distasteful in Ace's mouth, wrong on so many levels. Oyaji has passed on the belief to him that there was never a proper reason to abandon family. Ace will never forgive Roger for that. But Luffy was not like Ace. His little brother was kind and always ready to forgive. He liked forming connections and he always saw the best in people. Luffy now had the chance to know his father. Ace never will. He thought the pain Roger had caused was already gone after he got Oyaji, but it's still hidden deep within his heart. He will never get the answers he wanted nor the time to know him. But Luffy will and Dragon better made up for all the time he missed. Because if that BSTRD won't, Ace would surely hunt the man down if he ever let Luffy down. Sorry for my attitude. Ace breathed out. He reached for his temples, rubbing them ever so lightly. When I first saw the news that they're gonna kill you, I asked Sabo to help me rescue you, Luffy said wistfully. He didn't agree and I felt so hopeless at that time. Sabo has amnesia, Luffy. Of course, he won't agree to help a man he doesn't remember, Ace defended his actions. I know, but that doesn't make it hurt less. Luffy chewed his lower lips. But do you know who helped me? It's my dad. Ace's gray eyes widened for a moment, mouth hanging open. He couldn't think of a motive for Dragon to intervene in his demise. Luffy chuckled, reminiscing. Dad told Sabo that it's gonna be a mission, so Sabo was finally given permission to leave. Whether he did it for me or Sabo or for any other reason, I'm still thankful for his help. Without him, Sabo and I wouldn't be able to reach you in time. It would be our greatest regret. You really seem to like him. Ace managed to smile for his brother's sake. I do, Luffy nodded, back his earlier joyfulness. It's nice having someone watching over me. If that was Luffy's resolve, who was Ace to deny his younger brother a family? Maybe he judged Dragon wrong and it's up to Luffy to work their relationship out. Ace may be his older brother, but Luffy is old enough to know what is the best for himself. Hi, Ace. Just want to inform you that Silver's Rayleigh is here and wants to see your brother, Haruta said, straight to the point, with a wave. He appeared out of nowhere with his ever-happy-go-lucky personality. Rayleigh is here. Luffy repeated in excitement, immediately standing up. I gotta see him. Wait, Lou. But Luffy was already running to go and see the man. Ace cursed under his breath. Thanks, Haruta. Ace called back before dashing to get his brother away from trouble. The deck was already full of his siblings who were curious about the retired pirate. Ace finally knew where that strong presence he suddenly sensed came from. The Dark King was not an everyday sight after all. Rayleigh preferred to stay out of the spotlight now, enjoying the retirement he got decades ago. Whatever reason for him to come and show himself on an enemy's ship must be important. Ace grabbed Luffy's hand, but it was too late. His younger brother was already propelling to launch himself in the air, tagging Ace along. The two landed in front of Rayleigh and Whitebeard, who was in the midst of a conversation. Rayleigh. Luffy greeted happily as he stood up on his feet. Hello, Luffy. Seeing your exuberance, I assume your mission went well, Rayleigh smiled. The old man grabbed his hat on the ground, putting it on Luffy's head. That straw hat is important. Try not to lose it. Yeah, I don't think Shanks will appreciate that, Luffy giggled, holding the hat with both hands. That hurts me more than it should have. Ace grumbled, standing up. He rubbed the side of his hips. This is Ace, my brother, Luffy introduced enthusiastically. Ace, this is Rayleigh. He helped us lots back in Sabaody. Ace chose to remain silent. If there's one man closer to his BSTRD father, it would be this old man. The Dark King was staring at him with curiosity as if noticing the resemblance. Ace held no agnostic feeling over the man, but he couldn't help but feel angry at what he symbolized. Ace knew that Luffy had met the Dark King before, as he heard from his stories. But he didn't actually think that their connection would run deeper. Rayleigh, Whitebeard acknowledged in a neutral tone. Permission to be on board, Newgate? Rayleigh asked, handing him a huge sake bottle as a peace offering. Whitebeard crinkled his nose. You already invited yourself over. I see no reason to refuse you. Thank you. Rayleigh nodded. I've only come here for Luffy-kun. I have a proposition to make. And what does a legendary pirate want from my rookie brother? Ace found himself asking, wary about the man's true motives. His gray eyes glared antagonistically. Ace, correct? Sabo-kun already asked a similar question before, and the short answer is that he's just an interesting young man. He has the potential and I can see to it that he will achieve that. Rayleigh answered in a friendly laid-back tone. You want him as your apprentice, Whitebeard deduced, staring at the retired pirate with an unblinking gaze. Ready to choose Roger's successor now, are we? Indeed, Rayleigh confirmed with a sly smile. Brat, Whitebeard looked over at Luffy with a smirk. That straw hat fits you very well. Tell me, what is your dream? I'm gonna be the Pirate King. Luffy screamed, ever so loudly for everyone on deck to be heard. I know you're Ace's captain and he respects you a lot, but I'm the one who's gonna get the One Piece first. Murmurs between his siblings started buzzing. It earned a few chuckles from the others, entertained by the idea that an upstart dared stand against the strongest man in the world, without any hesitation or fear in his eyes. Luffy had easily been accepted amongst the Whitebeards. They already knew that he would be the type of lad to yell something like that to their father. His eccentrics had always been charming and no one had taken offense over his statement. It just reminded them of when Ace first joined the crew. Ace sighed, shaking his head in amusement. Oyaji, Luffy is just like that. He's never afraid to say what's on his mind. Cheeky brat, Whitebeard guffawed, interest in the pirate was piqued 10 times over. Well, he's all yours, Rayleigh. Are you fine about this, son? The question was directed at him. Ace nodded unconsciously. What Luffy needed now was allies, people who can help him become stronger to take on what lies ahead in the new world. Despite being an old man, Ace knew that Rayleigh was still a fearsome beast. And Oyaji seemed to trust Rayleigh, even if they used to be a nemesis. And if there's one person who can make Luffy take one step ahead toward his dream, it would be the right-hand man of the Pirate King. If you are willing to train him, I just want to let you know that he has Conqueror's Haki, Ace revealed, making some of his siblings flinch in surprise. Interesting. Rayleigh smirked as he stroked his beard. What's that? Luffy asked. You'll learn soon enough. For now, there are more pressing matters. Rayleigh turned to face Luffy. First, we need a way to reach out to your crew. Oh yeah? What are we gonna do? With the mention of his lost family, Luffy's attention was diverted all at once. We're going to Marineford, Rayleigh announced with an endearing smile. And Ace probably shouldn't have agreed to their arrangement. Just call me Sabo, he introduced in a casual tone. He didn't offer a handshake as he knew he would be turned down. What's yours? The raven-haired boy was just stuck staring at him with his rueful gray eyes. Even at a young age, he seemed to carry hatred on his shoulders that could last a lifetime. Sabo knew he was being cautious. After all, they were strangers who seemed to have issues trusting other people. Ace. His gray eyes widened as he unconsciously revealed it. Ace growled, glaring at Sabo with such ferociousness. It's none of your business. Suit yourself, Sabo rolled his eyes. It was the first time Sabo had heard his voice and it sounded heavier than he anticipated. He silently watched as Ace treated the fresh wound on his right arm. Earlier that day, Sabo had run into trouble with the thugs whose turf was in Edge Town. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was outnumbered and he knew there was no way that he was winning a fight against 10 men alone. And as Sabo reached Grey Terminal, the boy was in his path. Sabo passed him but the thugs pushed the boy away. Next thing Sabo knew, the boy was throwing fists against the men 10 times his size. And instead of just hiding, Sabo decided to help the boy since he held grudges against them. Though battered and bruised on every part of their bodies, the two of them remained victors. Sabo had a hiding place where he stocked a first aid kit. He offered the boy to come with him and he followed silently. Thanks for your help earlier, Sabo said. He really meant it but it sounded rather mocking when it came out of his mouth. I didn't do it for you. Ace scoffed, tone disgusted. And you don't have to be pretty chummy with me. It's just making you look pathetic. Sabo was entertained. He seemed to be an interesting boy and it wouldn't hurt him if he tried befriending him. Sabo knew Ace wasn't a liar, not unlike those people back in High Town. Those nobles only pretend to like him but Ace was straight out honest about his viewpoint. Besides, if it wasn't for Ace's help, Sabo would probably have ended up gutted. Ace stood up, although limped, and started walking a few meters away. Sabo remained still, eyeing as he left the place. Where do you live? I can escort you there if you want, Sabo offered. Ace looked back one more time, looking all high and mighty. I don't reveal my place to people I don't trust. Sabo gave him a taunting smile. Yeah, whatever. We'll see each other again. And next time that happens, I'll kill you if you ever get in my way. Ace threatened with his best menacing voice. His reply only made Sabo chuckle loudly, and it seemed to surprise Ace. I'd like to see you try. Come and get me. I'm always here hanging out in Gray Terminal. Sabo has never seen such a hateful boy before. Pirate ship? You guys want to be pirates? I want to be one, too. Sabo turned his head, eyes widened with fright. Together with Ace, they ran toward the source of the voice. They jumped down the tree and immediately mugged the kid wearing a straw hat. The boy kept on mumbling random things about pirates as Sabo and Ace tied him in a bark. Sabo almost felt pity as he could see that. The boy had so much innocence in him, something he wouldn't see in a place like Gray Terminal. Wow, Ace. I didn't know you traveled this far every day, he said without any ounce of fear in his tone, blissfully unaware of the danger in his situation. Shut up, Ace hissed, putting both of his hands on his hips. This is the Luffy you talked about? Sabo questioned, looking at him. Ace did tell a thing or two about the boy, hating how he kept on bugging him every day. You told him about me? Luffy looked happier this time, making Sabo bewildered. I told him how annoying you are. Ace deadpanned. He also told me you're empty-headed, Sabo added, crossing his arms over his chest. Oh yeah? You know we're dissing you, right? Sabo's eyes started twitching uncontrollably. He finally got here even though I didn't use any walkable routes, Ace said with a sigh. Are you Ace's friend? Be my friend, too, buddy. Don't call me buddy, Sabo scowled. He could see now why Ace hated the kid. Their personalities were in spades. Ace has a track record of disliking people who just wanted to be friends with him. What's your name? Luffy asked excitedly. Sabo stated, out of habit. He quickly snapped out of it. I'm not telling you. The kid just laughed merrily. If Sabo thought Ace was confusing enough to figure out, Luffy was 10 times more puzzling. Sabo has never seen such a joyful kid before. Did you know that when men drink together they become brothers? Brothers. Such a foreign word to Sabo. But it only meant one thing for him. Love. How wonderful it was to be able to choose a family, to have a reason to exist, and to never feel lonely anymore. Brothers, really? Luffy mouthed in awe. Maybe we'll not be pirates on the same ship, but we will be united by our bond of brotherhood. Ace smiled freely at that moment and nothing else mattered. No matter what we do or where we are, our bond can't be broken. They picked up the cups and put them in the air. From now on, we're brothers, Ace declared. They clicked their Sakazuki cups together before taking a drink. And for the first time in his life, Sabo finally knew what family meant. When he opened his eyes, everything was blurry. It was dark, though colors did gradually return. Above were the blinding white lights. Slowly, he blinked, vision still adjusting to work properly, but nothing changed. He closed his eyes once more, not wanting to overdo it. Headache ensued and it was painful to deal with. Memories from the past have resurfaced in his mind, including those ones way before he had gotten the scar on his eye. The endless summer he spent together with them, the familiar feeling of love and camaraderie, and the sense of belonging and freedom, all became clear now. He got it all back, just like what he always wanted. In his surroundings, he could hear the beepings of machines, probably his own heartbeat. He turned his head and saw a window to his left, the pale light of dawn filtering through the curtains. Outside, the sea went about its business, unaware of his awakening. He took a deep breath and tried to move his arms, but they felt heavy and unresponsive. He was in a ship, feeling the swaying of the sea, cradling him gently. Sabo? He knew the voice by heart now. Koala's voice was hoarse with a tint of yearning and hope. Sabo opened his hazel eyes, gazing at his partner. She looked tired, bags under her eyes indicating she hadn't been sleeping much. Her hair was disheveled and it was longer than Sabo remembered it to be. Hey! Sabo croaked, smiling fervently. Hi, Koala greeted back, tears slowly forming. She held his left hand and maneuvered it towards her cheeks, rubbing it gently. I missed you. I know. Wait for a moment, okay? I'm going to call a doctor. The next bit was a haze. Koala sat near him during the whole procedure. The doctor was a familiar face Sabo frequently has seen in the newspapers over the years. It was Marco the Phoenix. Sabo didn't even know he was a doctor. He started asking questions, though Sabo had difficulty answering most of them. Marco checked all his vital signs, heart rate, blood pressure, and temperature. It was normal, all things considered. And then came the physical exam where it all went downhill. He could move his limbs slowly but surely, although his muscles still feel very weak. Next, Marco assessed his visuals. He carefully removed the bandage on the left part of his face. Using a light pen, he shone it directly into Sabo's eye. I think it's blind. Sabo stuttered, remorseful. He swallowed the thick lump in his throat. I can't see a thing. What? Koala mumbled in confusion. From what Ivankov has told me about the incident that caused your amnesia years ago, I feared that it might be the case. Marco sighed as he began to explain. Magellan's poison is a combination of toxins that are so complex it's hard to determine what's mixed in it. It seems like the poison has affected the occipital lobe of your brain. And there might be other chronic effects on your kidneys or endocrine system. I'm still going to run other tests to know other underlying effects. You lose some, you win some. Sabo breathed out, placing a hand on top of his left eye. He always knew that he might be blind one day. The doctors from the army have confirmed that it will slowly deteriorate, the only difference is that it's sooner than anticipated. Your amnesia? Marco asked. I've got my memories back, Sabo replied in a happy tone. That's good to hear, Sabo-kun, Koala smiled, wiping away her tears. Ace and Luffy, where are they? Sabo questioned. Are they all right? They are now, don't worry about it, Koala assured, tightening her hold on his hand. They just got back after taking care of some business. I forced them to nap in the room across here. Do you want me to get them? Marco offered. Sabo nodded slowly. Marco immediately obliged and went out of the room, leaving the two alone. How am I supposed to face them now? Sabo asked, not sure if he was questioning himself or Koala. I'm sure you'll find a way. I can't believe I treated Luffy so horribly. Sabo groaned, grabbing his blonde hair in frustration. I yelled at him so many times. Koala chuckled lightly, Luffy as well. Luffy. I'm sure he doesn't take those harsh words by heart. And please do remind me to thank Dragon-san. Sabo looked at her with a terrified look as realization dawned upon him, leaving a heavy feeling in his stomach. I was so close to not being able to help Ace. If Dragon-san didn't let me leave Baltigo, then Ace would probably be. He shuddered, unable to finish the statement. No more what-ifs, things already happened the way they're supposed to go, Koala reminded, eyebrows furrowed together. So what did those two do? Rayleigh-san found a way for Luffy to contact his crew. They went to Marineford. Since the admirals were deployed elsewhere to hunt down those who escaped from Impel Down, Luffy and the others easily infiltrated inside for a few minutes. Sabo's mouth hung open. So let me get this straight, in just 3 months, Luffy has sneaked inside Enies Lobby, Impel Down, and Marineford, 3 of the most powerful strongholds of the world government, with no consequences whatsoever. Congratulations, Sabo. I no longer consider you the most insane person I've ever met, Koala deadpanned with a clap. That's my little brother for you, Sabo chuckled, thinking about how far Luffy has come. He's no longer the boy who kept on chasing after his older brothers. Luffy rang the Ox's bell as a distraction. His true intention was tattooed on his shoulders. There was a newspaper on the table and Koala showed it to Sabo. Sabo squinted his eyes, looking at the picture below the page. It showed Luffy standing notably with a fierce look. His signature straw hat was hanging on his nape. On his left shoulder, showed ciphers that were meant for his crew. On his back were Rayleigh, Jinbei, and Ace. One more thing, Koala's face showed grim. She unfolded the newspaper and the front page was revealed. Do you know about this? Fire Fist Ace, the Pirate King's son. Bloody hell. Sabo cursed, immediately grabbing the newspaper from Koala. If there's one thing Ace despised the most, it was his heritage. He hated the legacy the Pirate King left, forcing him to forever live in a shadow. Ace's dream has always been to make a name for himself, even greater than that of Rogers, to be able to prove his existence and be free from the chains of his blood. But now that the whole world knows about it, Sabo could see that it won't end well with Ace. Ace-kun wanted to come along to prove that he's been saved and that no one should mess with the Whitebeards. I guess that backfired for him, Koala sighed, unaware of Sabo's inner turmoil. They also announced Luffy's connection to Dragon-san. Ace didn't truly tell me about that fact, but I figured it out along the way. Sabo muttered. Over the years, Ace would go over drunk men and ask what they think would happen to Roger's son. It was not hard to connect those things together as Ace didn't even try to hide it enough. Well, that's all for now. Try to rest, okay? Koala said, smiling. I'm going to get you water. Sabo nodded silently, letting his mind wander elsewhere. Sabo! Before he could turn and look, Luffy had already tackled him in a hug. Sabo jerked from the sudden movement, groaning as the muscles in his body ached. Luffy yelped, letting go of his injured brother, not wanting to hurt him further. I'm sorry. I just missed you so much. You've been sleeping for so long and you missed like a bazillion meals. I was so worried you might not be getting any food, but Pineapple explained that. Luffy started babbling excitedly. I'm fine. Sorry, I had you worried, Sabo smiled, content in seeing him as energetic as he could be. Give your brother a hug, Lou? More gentler this time. Luffy obliged, embracing him more mildly. Sabo placed his chin on Luffy's shoulders. Closing his hazel eyes, he allowed himself to mellow in Luffy's warmth. Even when they were younger, Luffy loved giving hugs and Sabo loved indulging them. Growing up in a family that never showed physical affection, Luffy's embrace was always a nice treat. Then his eye locked in with Ace. And even now, he seemed to carry the hatred of the world behind his back. Ace was a mess. His wounds were already healed and his body looked healthy. And yet, the look on his face told Sabo otherwise. Ace stared at him with a downcast gaze, gray eyes were dull and empty. His shoulders were slumped as he took a step slowly, movement seemed forced, approaching them. Tears flowed freely on Ace's cheeks and it made Sabo tense. It was the first time he had ever seen his brother cry. Sabo moistened his dry lips. He could feel the beating in his chest, loud and fast. His hand felt cold, scraping the underside of his fingers, hoping it could remove the worry away but to no avail. There was a knot in his stomach. Sabo gulped, unable to moisten his parched throat. 10 years. He was gone for 10 years and yet, the familiar feeling of love and hope was still present in his heart. They were his family and the three of them were together again, at last. They were the reminder that Sabo would never be alone anymore. He wouldn't experience the same pain of yearning for who he was because the answer was finally in front of him. He's Sabo. The brother of Ace and Luffy. And for him, that's all that matters. Something in Ace broke and he rushed towards them. His arms embraced them both, weeping. And with that, Luffy's walls opened, crying freely as he started babbling about how much he had missed them. Under his breath, Sabo muttered reassuring words to their younger brother. I'm sorry. Ace apologized, wiping the tears away using his shoulders. I am the one who's supposed to. I refuse to hear those words, Ace. Sabo stopped him midway. You and Lou are my brothers and I want to protect you with everything that I had. Lou? You called me Lou? Luffy perked up, and joy came in a surge. Does that mean you got your memories back? Yes, Sabo confirmed with an enormous smile spreading across his face. I remember drinking sake with you too on that fateful day. Sabo! Luffy screamed, back on a full-blown cry again. You didn't have to suffer because of me. I'm not worth it. Those times I've spent with you and Luffy were the happiest I've ever been, Sabo smiled nostalgically. He took in a breath before saying his next words. It's all thanks to you. You gave me a little brother that loved us despite our flaws. And I had you, the first friend that I ever had, the person I trusted the most. You'd made well worth it. Sabo, Ace stuttered, biting his lower lips. He sniffed, looking up and hoping that the tears would stop. Thank you. Just thank you. That's much better, don't you think? I half expected you to punch me, to be honest. Ace snorted a laugh, easing the tension in his shoulders. Would you like me to? Sabo raised an eyebrow. If it helps you then why not? Oh please, I don't want to listen to a MSCSD's pitiful pleas. Sabo did an eye roll, snorting. Besides, I'm the one to talk. I abandoned you and Luffy. Abandoned? Ace repeated in absurdity. That's out of your jurisdiction. It isn't your fault that you've had amnesia. It's those DMN celestial dragons. I happily punched one for you, Sabo. Luffy interjected all smiles. And you? Ace turned his attention to the youngest. Next time you go punching those scumbags, invite me, okay? Will do. Luffy mockingly saluted, gone the trace of melancholy in his face. Sabo let out a chortle, shaking his head. He thought about how easily they went back into having playful banters. But seriously Sabo, Ace leaned forward, steadying an eye contact. Could you please stop being a martyr for once? No, Sabo scorned. Martyr complex. Guilt complex. Sophisticated. Arsonist. Cravat. Luffy derided, intervening. Cravat is not an insult, Luffy, Sabo said roughly. And why are you taking his side? Luffy loves me more, Ace proudly presented with a smirk. And I'm the oldest. Says who? Sabo's nose scrunched, scowling. Says the guy who's born on the first day of the year. I've always known it. Ace explained. March 20th. Sabo whispered, realizing that after 10 years of celebrating his birthday on a random day of the year, he finally remembered when it was. It would save Koala the trouble of picking a day. Nah, Sabo, Luffy called out, ending his trail of thoughts. I'm really happy you remember us now. No more sacrificing yourself to save us, okay? Ace prompted with seriousness. Sabo just gave him a genuine smile. If it means protecting my brothers, I will never regret those decisions. The losses may have outweighed the victories. Sacrifices were necessary and he had to endure them first to strengthen his heart. Still, Sabo considered them as lessons, experiences that made him who he was today. They could never turn back time and wished for a much better outcome. All they could do now was to move forward. And this time, the three of them would face them together. Days passed by and Sabo slowly regained his strength. Luffy and Ace were stuck by his side all the time. With Ace making sure he wouldn't move an inch and Luffy forcing him to eat meat as much as he could, it got exasperating real quick. Sabo let them be. After all, they wanted to make up for the years lost. They narrated stories about each other's life, the adventures they had on the seas, the islands they sightsaw, and all the people they met along the way. Most missions Sabo did were confidential, but he found a way to tell it to them without revealing too much information. It was exactly what they wanted when they were children, the freedom of adventure. Koala and Hack were eyeing him like a hawk, frequently checking on the infirmary to make sure Ace and Luffy haven't done anything that could kill Sabo. After learning that he was awake and making sure he was fine, Ivankov bid his farewell to get back to his kingdom. Of course, the Okama Queen gave Sabo an earful about his recklessness first. Sabo also learned that Karasu was the first one to leave with his men without waiting for him to wake up. Duties in the army come first above anything else. He got visitors from the Whitebeards, too. Mostly the former Spades pirates who were now in the 2nd Division under Ace. He had a long conversation with Deuce, complaining about Ace's behavior much to Ace's chagrin. There were also guests from the division commanders. Most notable were Aizu, who gave him a beautiful flower arrangement, and Haruta, who told endless embarrassing stories about Ace. On the 5th day since he awakened, Marco deemed him well enough to be out of bed rest. Sabo took a quick shower and got into much more comfortable clothing, cravat still included. After that, his brothers gave him a tour of Moby D, with everyone greeting them. It's the biggest ship Sabo has ever been on. The last place they went to was the deck where the captain's ship, Whitebeard, was currently located. Other crew members were also hanging out trying to get fresh air. My name is Sabo, he introduced himself with a radiant smile, wanting to give a nice impression. As the Chief of Staff of the Revolutionary Army, I would like to express my deepest gratitude. You've been very hospitable to us during our stay. You have manners. Unfortunately, you weren't able to share that with your brother. Whitebeard poked with a grin. I do have manners. Ace complained, stomping his feet. The first time you met Oyaji, you literally tried to blow his face off, Rakuyo deadpanned, crossing his arms. And you also tried murdering Oyaji at least 100 times. Haruta added with a chirp. You kidnapped us. What do you expect me to do? Remain civil? Ace defended. And why are you guys bringing this up now? Ace did that? Sabo blurted out, side-eyeing his brother who was groaning in a mortified manner. Of course, he did that, this is Ace we're talking about. It's okay, Asen. That's how Ace makes friends. Luffy exclaimed, taking his older brother's side. Ace threatened to kill me the first time we met. He also tried feeding Luffy to countless ferocious animals in the forest we grew up in, Sabo illuminated in a very happy tone that got Ace's siblings worried. Ace reached for his face, hiding in embarrassment. Slandering me now, are we? Sabo-kun, Aizu uttered, looking at him with an interrogating stare. Did you say that you're the Chief of Staff? Chief of what? Luffy repeated, tilting his head in confusion. Your brother is basically the second in command of the Revolutionary Army, Jozu summarized, amusement in his tone. Why? Luffy asked again. What do you mean, why? Sabo asked in a fake offended tone. You don't believe in my abilities? You hurt me, Luffy. No, you're not. Ace's brain was haywire, looking at him with a blank expression. Yes, I am. Why do my own brothers can't believe I can achieve that? The RA is doomed. They're being led by a complete sociopath. Ace spouted in terror, making Sabo roll his eye. Brotherly banter, what bliss, Whitebeard remarked. I still haven't said my appreciation. I would like to thank you for saving my son, Sabo, Luffy. I didn't do it for you. Luffy said, scowling. Ace hit him in the head. Don't show that kind of behavior. Sabo. Ace is being mean. Luffy complained, making others laugh at the scene they were causing. What do you say about becoming my sons? Sabo and Luffy simultaneously looked back at the man, sharing an expression that looked bewildered yet intrigued. Accept it, Yua, Marco encouraged with a sly smirk. If Ace has a habit of attempting homicide, Oyaji likes to adopt strange oddballs. Nah, I already have a dad. 2 dads would be too confusing, Luffy explained in the simplest logic possible for his brain to comprehend. Ace shook his head. Believe me, Luffy. Oyaji would be the much better option. I'm good, too, but thank you for the offer, Sabo declined politely. If he also had to consider the closest thing he had for a father, it would be Dragon. If that's your decision then. You can still come back here anytime you want, Whitebeard said in merriment. Let's have a celebration. For Ace's homecoming and his brother's welfare. Collective cheers of agreement were heard throughout. In just an hour, the party was already in full swing. The deck was immediately full with the crew members wanting the taste of booze. Joyous yells and blasting music were heard throughout the ship. Food was served to everyone, hot and fast. Sabo was not used in that kind of environment. Sure, the army did have events every now and then, but not with this intensity. The Whitebeards were surely a rowdy bunch. And from what Sabo could tell, they probably had parties frequently evident from the way things were going. There were bets ongoing, karaoke where voices were breaking, card games where every participant was cheating, and other things. There he was on the farthest corner of the deck, together with Koala and Hack, which he fetched earlier. They already ate dinner and were now sipping a few liquors. They watched the scene in front of them, not wanting to stand out too much. "So what have you two been up to?" Sabo asked, kind of guilty that he's been ignoring them and has spent most of his time together with his brothers. "We're hanging out with Jinbei," Koala answered before putting a takoyaki in her mouth. Though he already left 3 days ago to return to Fishman Island, Hack remarked with a wistful sigh. Sabo nodded unconsciously. After being with Koala for many years, he learned things about her more than anyone. Sabo knew how much respect and admiration Koala has for Jinbei. If Sabo had a reunion with his brothers, he's happy Koala got her own with the said Fishman. "What's your plan for now?" Hack inquired, swirling the liquor in his hand. "Ace said that Rayleigh-san will fetch Luffy soon to begin his training. Do you think Dragon-san will let me come with them?" "He's not heartless. He'll understand," Koala replied with a shrug. "But Hack and I have to return soon to look after your paperwork, so you should thank us now." Loud yellings interrupted them, causing them to look at the commotion. Sabo searched for his brother, which he effortlessly located. Luffy was amid the uproar happening. He was dancing and singing, whilst eating anything he could grab. It was very entertaining indeed, as Luffy was the only one who could multitask those things all at once. "Luffy-kun really is the spotlight everywhere he goes," Koala commented, blue eyes twinkling. "There's something special about him," Hack remarked in agreement. "Luffy is the kind of person who's not afraid to love." Sabo smiled, warmth enveloping his heart. "How can you not love someone like that?" Luffy was rare, Sabo and Ace always knew it. He was the kind of boy who lived life to the fullest, with no hesitation nor fear, to simply exist and live freely. He's not afraid to show his emotions or feel too deeply. Luffy's childlike innocence made Sabo appreciate life. Most of all, Luffy has the power to save people. Whether it was Ace who he saved from the clutches of existential dread or Sabo who he saved from loneliness, Luffy always had that influence over others. And Sabo was proud to call him brother. "There you are!" Ace yelled, running over to him. "This party is for you guys. Don't just stand there." "Oh no, we're not brave enough for pirates," Hack laughed while stroking his mustache. "Drunk and rowdy pirates," Sabo added mischievously. "We're used to stealth and not public appearances, Ace-kun." Koala chuckled. So the supposed mysterious and enigmatic organization in the world was nothing against a simple party. Ace taunted, smirking as he put both of his hands on his hips. "Sabo! Look!" Luffy appeared in front of them, meat in both of his hands. Between his nose and mouth, there were chopsticks inserted, making his appearance as comical as it could be. Sabo snorted a laugh. "What is that for?" "Idiot!" Ace geezed, snickering uncontrollably. "Come on! Let's go and have some fun. Asen said that we can eat all the meat we want." Extending his arms, Luffy wrapped them and started dragging all of them toward the middle. The afterparty was always the quietest. It was 2 hours past midnight. Most were already passed out, drunk, and would most definitely have a headache once they awakened in the morning. The deck was full of grown men who decided that they would spend the night sleeping on the cold hard floor. To see the most formidable crew in the world be reduced to party animals was nothing but entertaining to Sabo. During these times, the three brothers went up to the crow's nest, hiding away from the rest of the world. It's been days, but they seemed to have never-ending stories to share and narrate with each other. Sabo craved it more than he realized. "Nah, Sabo, are you a pirate now?" Luffy laughed, pointing at the eye patch. Sabo touched the eye patch on his left eye. He put it on earlier just because he could. He saw Ace's face turning into a mush of guilt again, and it just made Sabo sigh. "Yar!" Sabo reenacted in his best piratey voice. "I am here to get you booty." "Surely we don't act like that," Ace snorted, placing a hand on his chin. "Yeah, you're the type of pirate to get stuck on an uninhabited island and almost starve to death." Sabo shrugged playfully. "Deuce told you about that?" Ace grumbled, unamused. "He told me about how you got your devil fruit," Sabo said. "Did you also think it's a dessert like Luffy?" "It's the most disgusting thing I've ever tasted," Ace grimaced, making a face. "I don't remember how it tastes though," Luffy pondered, tilting his head, deep in thought. "But it's probably delicious." "Of course, only you Luffy?" Ace did a facepalm, shaking his head. Oh, by the way, Lou, Sabo said, thinking that it was the right time. I have a present for you. A present? What is it? Luffy's eyes lit up, hands flailing. Ta-da, Sabo revealed the gift hidden inside his coat. It was covered in a gift wrapper that had a childish blue pattern of pirates. Luffy wasted no time grabbing it and tearing it all apart. Even now, you're still finding ways to spoil him, Ace chuckled, ruffling Luffy's raven hair and making their younger brother pout. When did I spoil him? Sabo raised an eyebrow. You always gave him the biggest piece of meat. It's 'cause you're always stealing, Luffy defended, stopping what he was doing. Never letting him do chores. You always complain that I kept doing it wrong. And you're always giving him gifts like what you're doing right now. I didn't ask for them. Sabo smirked. Sounds like somebody's jealous. Yeah, Ace scoffed, before realizing what he uttered. No, I'm not. Oh, dear older brother, am I not good enough as a gift? Sabo questioned mischievously. I got it. Luffy exclaimed, raising the telescope in the air. He immediately peeked through, looking up at the sky. Sabo let out a chuckle. I'm sorry it's 10 years late. How and when did you have the time to find one? Ace asked while staring at Luffy, who was acting as childishly as he could be. I am honestly impressed. Koala works magic, Sabo replied, then tapped Luffy's shoulder to get his attention. Lou, the next time you see Koala, say thank you to her, okay? Luffy nodded enthusiastically, still looking through the telescope. Look, Sabo. It's the Ursa Major. Sabo immediately looked up. They had been blessed with a clear night sky, allowing the stars to shine bright. The constellation, Luffy said, was one of the easiest to find, and sure enough, Sabo found it. You still remember them? Sabo murmured, smiling softly. Of course, I had the best teacher. Luffy complimented as an enormous smile flashed across his face. Back when you're, well, away. We still do stargazing from time to time, Ace replied with a soft smile. But I couldn't remember the stories behind them though? Luffy pouted before an idea came to his mind. Please tell them again. With the happiness Luffy was showing, Sabo felt as if he could never say no to his little brother. He nodded eagerly, wanting to make his younger brother exhilarated. Okay, so once upon a time. It was easy to go back to the routine they had most nights when they were still children. Sabo was the one narrating the myths, then Ace and Luffy would listen to him keenly. Soon, Luffy's head settled on Ace's shoulders. Their younger brother's eyes became heavy, closing them and allowing sleep to cradle him. His soft snores resounded. Sabo couldn't imagine Luffy more innocent than he looked at that moment. He's 17 now, but Sabo still sees him as the kid who used to chase after him and Ace just to be his friend. Nothing changes, huh? Ace murmured, sniggering. He supported Luffy's head towards his thighs, making Luffy sleep in a more comfortable position. We're only 20, but I'm already getting sentimental, Sabo said, sighing deeply. He took the telescope from Luffy's hand, afraid that it might be damaged. When we were younger, those days we spent together seemed to be endless. I know what you mean. Like, look at what happened to those boys now. Sabo smiled. Well, the boy found himself a family once again by utilizing murder and arson. What can I say? They love me, Ace said proudly. So how did they react when they found out about your father? Ace's gray eyes quickly lost their glimmer. His lips quivered, head bowing down and clenching his fists. Sabo knew he struck the nerve, opening up the most sensitive part of Ace's, one of the biggest influences in his life. Ace started, breathing deeply to calm himself. They accepted it more easily than I could ever imagine. It's not what I imagined, honestly. We just got back from Marineford and I was not even aware of that news. I was back down in a corner and ready to just run away, but Marco stopped me. Did you honestly think they'd kick you out of the crew? Sabo questioned, narrowing his eye. Ace shook his head. Oyaji knows about my connection to Roger even from the start. Marco and Thatch. I also told them about it long ago. I guess Oyaji talked to them, that's why there's not much of a fuss that went on. Everyone is a child of the sea, or so Oyaji says. You got adopted by your father's arch-nemesis. Sabo humored, sniggering. And you got adopted by your little brother's father of all people. Ace remarked, furrowing his brows in confusion. Wait, how does that work? This whole family thing is very weird. Dragon-san didn't adopt me. Sabo shrugged. And I don't think he will now that I'm literally an adult. Well, I'm glad that you and Luffy have found someone to look up to, Ace whispered, smiling. He started patting Luffy's hair, who was still comfortably sleeping on his lap. I've made peace with my heritage. Not everyone in this world will accept who I am. What matters is that I found a family that doesn't care about my blood. They see me as me. And for that, I would forever be thankful. I'm happy for you, truly am. Sabo's smile became wider. Ace laughed, placing his hand on the floor. He closed his eyes, allowing the sea breeze to cool his body, enjoying the moment they were having. Sabo stared at his brothers, memorizing every tiny detail about their appearances. Ace, come on, meet my dad. Luffy enthusiastically screamed, inviting him to come over. Ace was sitting in the corner, crossed legs as he simply watched his brothers call the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Sabo didn't understand the hostility on Ace's face. Ace just seemed to always have an antagonistic view about fathers in general. It was the next morning and the three of them had a sleepover in Ace's room. Dragon called right before they could go out and eat breakfast. Ever since Sabo had awakened from a coma, it was the second time they had the time to talk. The first one had been cut short as Dragon was busy over something. Nah, I'm good, Ace shrugged nonchalantly. You introduced us to Asen, let me introduce you to mine, too. Luffy complained, pouting. I don't like him because he abandoned you, Luffy, Ace explained with a sigh. It's for Luffy's own good. Sabo raised an eyebrow, not expecting that Dragon would actually reply to Ace's statement. I wanted him to have a normal childhood as possible, free from the burden of my name. Oh yeah? Ace reacted, unamused, not even the slightest bit. Why did you raise Sabo then? There was silence on the other line. The three of them patiently waited for a reply. Sabo opened his mouth then closed it again, wanting to defend Dragon's actions, but he couldn't really find a justifiable means. I'm glad to hear that you're all right now, Sabo, Dragon said, completely ignoring the earlier question. Don't just change the subject. Ace yelled. He stood up, clenching his fists, making his way towards the Den Mushi. Sabo and Luffy just shared a laugh over their brother's reaction. Dragon-san, Sabo snapped his fingers. I think Ace here has a point. I'm fine with it honestly. Luffy blinked innocently. Stay out of this, Ace stated harshly, scowling at him. Luffy's pout even grew further. But you're talking about me, so I have a right to say my opinions. Your older brothers know what's the best for you, Ace dismissed. Sabo rubbed his temples. It was still early in the morning and yet his brothers were already engaged in a screaming match. Dragon-san, it seems like you're no better than Garp-san. Oh, so you've met him? Dragon sounded so enthralled by the thought. Unfortunately, Sabo deadpanned, dreading all the beatings they suffered from the marine hero. Who could ever forget the infamous fist of love? It made Dragon chuckle, and it's been a while since Sabo has heard him laugh like that. His superior always maintained his serious demeanor, and it's nice to hear him lighten sometimes. Sabo concluded that Dragon was the original receiver of the fist of love. Just the thought of being punched by Garp in his prime was enough to send shivers down Sabo's spine. Maybe the fist of love hurt so badly Dragon never outgrew his rebellious phase. Your sarcasm is still intact, I see. It's the one thing I won't ever lose in life. Sabo marvelously remarked. I'll give you a 1-month break to catch up with your brothers. Make sure to cherish that. We're not giving Sabo back. Ace screamed, putting the receiver closer to his mouth. Yeah. Luffy backed up. Well, good luck with that. I trust my chief of staff to find his way home, Dragon challenged. Sabo could imagine that there was a smirk on the man's lips at that moment. It's nice to meet you, Ace, and thank you for being there for my sons. I'm going now. Bye, Dad. Luffy bid, waving his hand as if his father could see him. Sons, huh? Ace questioned, smiling smugly. He threw the Den Mushi back at Sabo. It's all your fault. Sabo caught the snail midair as he sighed in an exasperated manner. Whose idea was it again to be brothers? 3 days later, Rayleigh was back at the Moby D Dash. The preparations he made for Luffy's 2-year training were all set out, though the man was tight-lipped over where they would stay. Rayleigh had his own ship, but the Whitebeards provided a much more spacious and sturdier one, knowing that Ace and Sabo would tag along as well. After tons of food loaded up that could last them weeks were boarded, the journey of an old man and 3 brothers started. They also had the striker roped in as Ace's transport once he gets back. Sabo did enjoy the tranquility of being alone with his brothers. As much as he took delight in the Whitebeards, it was overwhelming meeting and interacting with Ace's many siblings. It was exhausting and his social battery was drained. This was a much-needed vacation after all the things that have transpired with his life over the past few weeks. They were all at the deck since the weather was pleasant. Sabo was entertaining Luffy by sparring. Between Sabo's proud grin and Luffy's unending giggles, neither were taking it seriously. Sabo was still not in the best condition, but he considered the match as some sort of light exercise. The sparring match ended as Luffy's stomach growled, signaling his 4th meal of the day. And so, Luffy went inside the galley to feed himself. Sabo kept glancing in Ace's direction. Ace was slumped next to the rails, cowboy hat covering his face away from the sun, arms crossed over his chest. His brother seemed to be napping. Sabo could see that Ace was not himself around Rayleigh. Ace preferred to not acknowledge the man when he was around. Not that Ace needed to, since Sabo didn't want to push him into doing something he obviously doesn't want. As for Rayleigh, he was steering the helm. Sabo noticed that the man was watching them silently earlier. Sabo made his approach, wanting to know some details about their trip. Now that we are far away from Moby D-. May I ask where you're planning to take us? Sabo inquired in a neutral tone. Rayleigh smiled, grabbing something in his pocket. He threw it towards the young man. Sabo caught the eternal pose, needle pointing towards the south. Rusicana? I don't think I've heard of it. Sabo handed the eternal pose back. It's an uninhabited island in the calm belt. It has a harsh environment as seasons change weekly. There are also hundreds of ferocious animals roaming, so it is perfect for Luffy to tame, Rayleigh explained. Animals, huh? We used to hunt back when we're still kids. It would be nice to do that again with them. With you and Ace-kun, I bet a mass extinction would be underway in just the first week. Rayleigh shook his head, chuckling. We'll make sure to leave some for Luffy then. Sabo smiled mischievously. I never struck you as a navigator, Rayleigh-san. I am knowledgeable enough in seafaring. You never know what it's like in these seas. Of course, you'll know. You're the vice-captain of the only pirate crew to have ever circumnavigated the Grand Line. Starstruck now, are we? Sabo shrugged his shoulders. Well, it's not an everyday opportunity to hear stories from such an acclaimed pirate. If you don't mind sharing them, that is. Out of the corner of Sabo's eyes, he saw his brother stirred. Ace sat up, ears tuned in with their conversation. That's gonna take us a while, Rayleigh remarked as he stroked his beard, though appearing enthralled by the idea. Good thing we have time then. You have to babysit us for a month before we leave Luffy in your care, Sabo exclaimed, grinning. Rayleigh, Ace acknowledged, standing before them. He cleared his throat before continuing. I've had realizations in these past few weeks. Apparently, being stuck in prison waiting for your impending doom is enough for someone to look back on everything about their life. So to make peace, I'd like to hear a story or two about Roger. Sabo raised an eyebrow, eyeing his brother leery. It's obvious to everyone that Ace ignored Rayleigh because of his connection to his biological father. Sabo was glad that Ace was the one taking the initiative into finding out more about his heritage. He's the type of man to name his son after his sword. There was silence as the two young adults stared at the old man in front of them. Sabo blinked, then glanced at Ace, before staring at Rayleigh once more. Rayleigh had a jesting smile plastered on his lips as if he had told them the wildest joke in the world. Pardon. Sabo faltered. What the F-? Ace reacted in aggravation. Rayleigh didn't answer right away as he burst into a burst of booming laughter. Answer my question, old man. What do you mean by that? Ace insisted, clenching his fists. Rayleigh hid his smile, not wanting to aggravate him further. I am sorry to be the one to inform you, Ace. I am certain Newgate knows about it too, but he doesn't have the heart to tell you. But Roger is not a swordsman as far as I am aware, Sabo pointed out with a snap. He never considered himself to be one. Though, I must say he is skilled. Roger did use it occasionally as it's one of the supreme grade blades. It's okay. There are names definitely worse than Ace, Sabo consoled. He patted his brother's back as a way to show his sympathy. It was Sabo's turn to laugh at the grief-stricken Ace, who had his jaw dropped. And that is? Ace questioned in irritation. Gigi named his only son Dragon as if their family name isn't already an animal-themed one. Ha! Ace exclaimed, perking up. No wonder he's the most wanted criminal. Why were you guys talking about my dad? Luffy mouthed, appearing next to them out of nowhere. He took a bite out of the meat in his hand after. Roger. Ace trailed, breathing deeply. He used his hands to wipe his face. He's an idiot, isn't he? Very, Rayleigh confirmed. And as time ticked and they had nothing else better to do, the brothers listened as Rayleigh recounted the tale of a lifetime. Rusicana is an island flourishing in fauna and flora. Its jungle had trees that towered high above, trunks covered in thick layers of moss and vines. The season was spring when they arrived and the whole place was covered in green grass. With the help of observation hockey, Sabo could sense the monsters that lurked deep within the forest, eyes gleaming in the dim light. They posed no threat as for now, so he paid them no heed. They helped Rayleigh set off camp exactly in the midst of the island. There stood an ancient town, the only proof that it once stood there was the crumbling ruins. Once done, Rayleigh let the brothers wander on their own. After all, it was a place of mystery and adventure. Look at what I found, Sabo. Luffy showed it to him excitedly, laughing uncontrollably. It was a mushroom that was bright yellow in color, top covered in green. Sabo grabbed the mushroom and inspected it with mystified eyes. I don't think it's edible. Too late, I already ate it. Luffy said between giggles. Are you trying to die? Ace grilled, pulling Luffy's ears as he lectured him. Well, I'm hungry and it looks very delicious and it is. Sabo looked at Ace, deadpanning. How on earth did you manage to keep Luffy alive all these years? In Luffy's own catchphrase, it's a mystery. Ace shook his head in defeat. Come on, you should try it. I bet it's gonna taste good when it's grilled with meat. Sanji could make it better and I know. An arrow pierced through the mushroom that Luffy was holding, launching towards the bark of a tree. In an instant, Sabo grabbed the staff on his back, readying a stance for action and will attack if provoked enough. Luffy fell over on the ground, still laughing like there was no tomorrow. Sabo concluded that Luffy's actions were the result of the mushroom he had eaten. Ace stood in front of Luffy, protecting him from whatever enemy they might have to face. Their eyes scanned the dense forest ahead, ready for the adversary to make a move. Sabo cursed under his breath. He allowed himself to be at ease just because he was together with his brothers. It was a stupid move to lay low just because this island was uninhabited. Suddenly, a group of figures emerged from the depths of the forest, their forms illuminated by the fading light of the day. They were dressed in colorful leather armor adorned with intricate patterns. They moved in such a precise manner, moving in their formation gracefully. The bow in their hands was pointed at them, ready to be unleashed any moment. Amid the entourage, Sabo recognized the woman he certainly had seen in pictures before. She was a lot taller than he expected. She strode through the forest with the grace of a snake, a lithe figure moving graciously. Her hair, the color of a raven, flowed behind her back up to her waist. Dignity and class oozed from her very appearance. Her glittering eyes surveyed her surroundings, not a trace of fear in her expression. Boa Hancock. Sabo hissed, gripping his staff tighter. He took a deep breath and tried to calm his nerves, thinking quickly as he surveyed the terrain. The protocol given in the army when meeting face-to-face with a warlord was to find the best escape route as fast as possible. But Sabo was never the one to follow the directives from the above, especially now if it involves the safety of his brothers. They're Kujas, Ace muttered under his breath. And here I thought we're gonna have a peaceful vacation. Straw Hat Luffy. Hancock muttered the name with animosity, spitting it out like poison. She held her head high, staring over at the said pirate who was still laying on the ground. Whatever it is that you need from him, you must face us first, Ace growled, ready to defend his brother any moment. You are a wanted man whose crime happens to be assaulting a celestial dragon. Do you plead guilty? Hancock interrogated with a seething expression, only focused on the teen. Yeah, so what about it? Luffy screamed. Gone was the trace of cheerfulness in his voice, replaced by the desire to defend his actions. And just like that, Hancock's whole demeanor changed. Ah, really? And you managed to live and tell the tale? How magnificent. Hancock squealed in delight, hands clasping together. Her deep brown eyes had a dreamy look, lost in thought as if she were thousands of miles away. Bring out the refreshments. We must celebrate such a trivial accomplishment. And just like that, the ice was broken. The Kujas dropped their weapon as they did exactly what their leader had ordered. The air was filled with the tantalizing aromas of cooking, making their stomachs growl in response to the inviting smell. A flurry of activity erupted as the Kujas emerged, each carrying a platter or bowl overflowing with food. They revealed enormous amounts of food, ranging from meat, fruits, and desserts, all arranged beautifully and presented with care. Eh? Ace blinked rapidly, glancing at Sabo who looked just as confused as he was. Luffy. I know how much you love meat, so I brought you plenty. Hancock gushed, showing a plate of steaming hot meat next to her. Thanks. Luffy hollered in joy, launching himself towards them. Wait, Lu! Sabo shouted. Sabo and Ace didn't have the time to stop their younger brother towards the supposed enemy territory. In old typical Luffy fashion, he immediately devoured everything in his sight. Luffy didn't even care if the food was poisoned. All he had in mind was to replenish his famished stomach. As she watched him eat, Hancock was completely enamored by the teen. Her eyes were fixed on Luffy with an intensity that was impossible to miss. She was absorbed in the sight of him as if nothing else in the world existed except for him and the food he was eating. It was as if she was trying to memorize every moment, every gesture so that she could relive it later on. Don't be alarmed by our sudden appearance. We mean you no harm, Nyan, said the elder Kuja who approached the two. A sharp cough interrupted them before Sabo could say something. These boys have been through a lot. It's understandable that they're on edge, Gloriosa, Rayleigh bespoke, crossing his arms. Rayleigh, Elder Nyan acknowledged. It seems like you are getting soft at your age. Ace cleared his throat, interrupting their pleasantries. Do you know why the Pirate Empress, the leader of the supposed legendary Kuja tribe, is here and currently gushing over my brother? He inquired dramatically, saying the question Sabo also had in mind. She is suffering from love sickness, Elder Nyan answered, shaking her head in exasperation. Huh? Sabo blinked rapidly, expecting this whole thing to be a joke. Ever since Haim-sama learned about the news of a rookie pirate punching a celestial dragon she despises the most, her utmost desire is to meet Straw Hat Luffy, Elder Nyan explained. A warlord that hates celestial dragons? Ace questioned, finding it hard to believe. Understandable. There's nothing to like about them, Sabo commented dryly. Whether one's from the Marines or revolutionaries, it seemed like everyone shared a mutual universal hatred towards the supposed world nobles. Are you saying she's in love with Luffy? Our Luffy? As the saying in the East goes by, love is a hurricane, Nyan. And how did you manage to track us down? That surely concerns me, Rayleigh voiced out. Haim-sama is desperate and Shikuyaku's intel works wonders. What a small world it is. Shikuyaku provided us not just Straw Hat's whereabouts but also his height, weight, likes, dislikes, and love for meat. The list goes on. Elder Nyan elaborated. And who's this Shikuyaku? Ace asked. My wife, Rayleigh answered, smiling. You have a wife? Everything just surprises you, Ace-kun. Rayleigh chuckled out loud. And what about you, Sabo-kun? You're spacing out. Sabo trailed, uncertainty in his tone. He heaved a heavy sigh, hands reaching to comb his unruly blonde locks. I'm so confused. Hey, Sabo, Ace called out, looking ever so serious. Are you sure we didn't take those magic mushrooms from Luffy earlier? Sabo's mouth dropped open. Does a hallucination ever hurt like this? He proceeded to pinch Ace's cheeks hard, making him yelp in pain. Hello. Luffy mentions that you're his older brothers, so I think it would be better if you'd also join him in eating. Hancock whirled around, all smiles as she faced them. Please don't be shy and help yourselves, so Rayleigh-san? You're also here? So dense. Elder Nyan complained. It's been a while, Hancock, Rayleigh greeted first before turning to the two brothers. You can trust them. We shared history all the way back. Sabo raised an eyebrow. He looked over at Ace, who shrugged exasperatedly. If Rayleigh trusted them, Sabo concluded that it was fine to socialize around. They shared food together, singing and eating. If someone told Sabo 3 months ago that he's going to have a party with the commander of the Whitebeards, the vice-captain of the Roger Pirates, and the empress of a supposed mythical tribe, he would surely laugh. But here he was now thinking that life really is unpredictable as it seems. The next day came by swiftly. Hancock left together with her crew, promising to visit Luffy once a month to provide food and other necessities for the 2-year-long training he was up ahead. As the three brothers stood on the shore of the beach, the sound of the waves crashing filled the air. It was hard to believe that a whole month had already passed since they reunited after 10 years of being apart. It felt like just yesterday that they had hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces as they reconnected after so many years. But now, as they looked back on the past month, it seemed like a blur, a whirlwind of laughter, reminiscing their childhood, and making new memories together. It was as if time had flown by in the blink of an eye, not stopping for anyone, leaving them with a sense of yearning for more moments spent together. It had been an incredible experience, but now as Sabo looked back at his brothers, his heart was filled with a sense of longing, wistful for more time together, for more moments spent exploring the world, and more sharing stories with each other. He had grown so accustomed to having his brothers by his side, to the feeling of being part of a family once again. Alas, time was never enough for them. A week before, Sabo had already contacted their base. He arranged for a vessel to come and picked him up. Rusakena was almost non-existent on new maps, but they managed to track him down using old ones. And on the morning of the last day of the month, the vessel flying the symbol of revolutionaries came fully into view, signaling the end of their reunion. You're leaving, huh? Ace asked, gray eyes staring at the horizon ahead. Being an adult also means you'll have responsibilities, Sabo responded with a hum. It's not like it's the end. We've already established that we'll visit Luffy together every 4 months. What about you, Ace? When are you leaving? Luffy asked, blinking. You want me out already, Lou? I'm hurt. Ace faked an offensive tone. Nua. I just thought you'd leave together with Sabo. Me and Sabo leaving might sadden you, Lou. I'll leave in the next few days. Please take care of him for me, Sabo flashed an affectionate smile. For a while, at least. You do know that's the same request you asked me 10 years ago, right? Ace smirked, crossing his arms across his chest. Yeah, and you actually managed to do it. I'm impressed, Sabo replied, clapping mockingly. Tsk. Have some faith in me, little brother. Well, this is it, then, Sabo muttered with a wistful sigh, dropping his shoulders. Yeah. Ace nodded, smiling sadly. I am so happy that I found you two again. I'm glad that. Luffy hugged Sabo before he could finish his little speech. Sabo could feel Luffy's body tensing as if stopping himself from unleashing the whirlwind of emotions he was currently feeling. Sabo held him tightly, feeling the years melt away in that single moment. He could feel Luffy's heartbeat against his chest, and he knew that he would do anything to protect him. The bond between them was unbreakable, and it had only grown stronger with the distance that had separated them. The little boy he had once known had grown into a young man, but the same playful spirit and a mischievous glint in his eye remained. Ace was there to embrace his two younger brothers as well. He could feel the strength and solidity of his older brother's frame, and he clung to him, almost as if he were a lifeline. The embrace was warm and encompassing, a cocoon of safety and familiarity that he had missed more than he had realized. They held tightly to each other for the longest moment, neither wanting to ever let go. "Come on guys, I'll miss you, too." Sabo laughed a little, breaking the silence between them. Luffy unwrapped himself, staring intently into Sabo's eyes. "Take care of yourself. I should be the one telling you that, Lou." Sabo grinned, showing his teeth. "Please don't ever forget us now," Ace requested, smiling radiantly. "Or I'll go to the ends of the earth just to track you down in Baltigo or wherever the heck you are." Sabo laughed. "I'll make sure of that." Sabo began walking away towards the vessel that shall carry him back to the home he considered for 10 years. He boarded and stood on the deck, looking back at his brothers on shore. Sabo spotted Rayleigh standing far away from them, giving the brothers their own moment. With no words between them, Sabo and Rayleigh nodded at each other as a token of farewell. "Ace. Luffy." Sabo screamed their names at the top of his lungs. "We really did it. We meet at the top. See you soon, Sabo." Luffy howled as loud as he could, waving both of his hands energetically as the vessel sailed away toward the sunset. "See you again, Bo." Ace also yelled, hands cupping around his mouth, matching Luffy's enthusiasm. Sabo could feel the wind whipping through his hair, the salty spray of the ocean on his face, and the steady rhythm of the ship beneath his feet. The world around him seemed vast and infinite, full of possibilities and unknowns. As the ship sailed away from the shore, he watched his brothers grow smaller and smaller until they were mere specks on the horizon. But he could still feel their presence with him, a constant reminder of the love and support he had in his life. Even if he didn't remember them for 10 years, the feelings they shared were like a treasure buried deep down. Sabo turned his gaze towards the setting sun, ready to face whatever lay ahead with courage and determination. His heart was full of hope and excitement, knowing that his journey was about to continue. But this time, he finally remembered the reason why he was doing all of this, the reason and bane of his existence. The sea was a very vast place. Despite the distance, they still found each other. Their bond would never be broken.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.